Chapter 1100. Boom. The heavenly tribulation became more and more intense as if it was angered by the heaven-pilfering divine ground. However, Tianyun didn't wait for it to continue condensing. He directly rushed forward and wanted to destroy the heavenly tribulation with one punch. As he approached, the heavenly tribulation was completely enraged. It was fine if it was disturbed by an external force, but it didn't expect the tribulation transcendence to dare to destroy it. In an instant, the heavenly tribulation turned into several lightning dragons that swallowed it whole. Break for me. Tianyun's eyes flickered. Crazy damage mode exploded. He directly punched forward and the entire heavenly tribulation was easily destroyed. Nothing could withstand his violent power, not even the heavenly tribulation. No matter how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, it couldn't be that much stronger than the tribulation transcendence. Under the crazy damage mode, it directly reached a level of crushing. Under his all-out attack, the heavenly tribulation was easily destroyed. It was no different from before. In fact, it was even a bit weaker than last time. Without a doubt, this was all thanks to the heaven-pilfering divine ground. Fortunately, the reward that should be given would still be given. The destructive power of the heavenly tribulation began to descend. It turned into star power and poured into his body, constantly nourishing his body and strengthening his meridians. This feeling of being bathed in a spring breeze made him feel very comfortable. This was the feeling he wanted. That was why he broke the heavenly tribulation time and time again to obtain the purest energy. I finally passed. After Tianyun woke up from meditation, the places that were originally damaged by the heavenly tribulation were quickly repaired. This kind of repair method made even him speechless. This was like an incomparably huge life that could quickly heal the wounds on his body. Next, he could rush to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch. This process wouldn't be particularly long, especially with so many resources here. To him, breaking through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch wasn't a problem. It might be a problem for others, but it didn't pressure him at all. No matter how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, could it be more powerful than his crazy damage mode? He immediately flew away to see if there was anything else he could plunder. Not long after he left, a few people flew over from the side, all of them looking at this area. Damn it, he ran away. The young man frowned. That's right. How could he pass the tribulation so quickly? He clearly felt like he was going through a tribulation just now, but in just a short while, he has already passed the tribulation successfully. Another young man asked doubtfully. We can only say that we came too late. The other party just happened to pass the tribulation. Otherwise, we would definitely be able to snatch the opponent's jade pendant. That way, we would be able to stay here for a while longer. Another young man felt very regretful. There was no doubt that the three of them were in cahoots, and they wanted to rob Tianyun of the jade pendant. Fortunately, he had left, or else a fierce battle would have ensued. Don't worry, that guy must still be here. Let's split up and look for him. One of them suggested. The other two nodded and quickly disappeared from the spot, splitting up to search in other places. Tianyun had no idea what was going on. As he flew forward, he saw quite a few natural treasures along the way. He felt that they would be useful to him, so he put them all into his inventory. After plundering along the way, a special island came into view. It was surrounded by rainbows, and it looked like a paradise island. Most importantly, there were many cultivators on the island. He thought that there would be fewer people here, but he did not expect to see more than 10 people meditating on the island. It felt like everyone was gathered here, meditating and cultivating. Without a doubt, the cultivation environment here was excellent. Otherwise, they would not have come here. They could not plunder any treasures here, so they could only look for a good place to cultivate. Otherwise, they would not have gathered here. When Tianyun approached, they all looked over. When they saw an unfamiliar face, they took a few more glances at him. At the same time, the token in Tianyun's hand flashed, which meant that there were people from the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm here. It would only flash when they met people from the same sect. When he looked up, one of them opened his eyes, stood up, and walked over. A junior from the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm. The person who walked over was a level 5 Lord of Heaven. His cultivation was quite high, and his overall level was shocking. He was definitely a genius. This place was also suitable for the Lord of Heaven's cultivation, and he could also improve by a lot. After all, the star power here was too thick. Yes, I did not expect to see Senior here. How should I address you, Senior? Tianyun saw that the other party was quite friendly. It seemed like he did not discriminate against cultivators of other races. You can call me Senior, Purple Crown. What about you, Junior? There was a purple crown on his head, and it was quite interesting to call him Senior. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven was not a human, but a phoenix. This was quite friendly. I am Tianyun, Tianyun introduced himself. So it is Junior Tianyun. I did not expect you to come here alone. Did no one else come with you? The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven asked. No, Elder Go Huang told me to come down by myself. He did not let anyone else come with me. Tianyun asked doubtfully, is there a problem? There is. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven's face darkened, and he transmitted his voice, if you go alone, it is very easy for you to be ambushed, and you will die. Although I do not have any proof, I feel that someone thinks so. We are not from the same holy realm, so it is better to be careful. Is there such a thing? The elder said that there is no problem. Tianyun frowned. He knew that this kind of thing would definitely happen, but Elder Go Huang said that there was no need to worry. Yes, they are very secretive. I could only find some clues, but I do not know who it is. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven said, the elder said that there is no problem, but that is based on the situation where there is someone watching. If you act alone, you will be ambushed, but you do not know who it is. This is the most troublesome thing. If they knew, they would definitely be punished. That's good. Besides Senior Apprentice Brother Purple Crown, are there any other Senior Apprentice Brothers? Tianyun asked. There are, but they are not here. I am cultivating on Divine Dream Island to deduce what will happen in the future. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven explained, since you have just arrived, you should cultivate here. This place is very safe. No one will dare to attack you, especially with so many people here. Divine Dream Island? As Tianyun looked at the island, information immediately appeared with his appraisal eye. Divine Dream Island, able to allow one to cultivate in their dreams, greatly increasing their cultivation speed. The main function is to deduce the future martial arts cultivation method, or the future road of cultivation. The success rate of deduction varies from person to person. Chapter 1101. This heaven-pilfering divine land is really amazing, there is such a thing, it is undoubtedly equivalent to a treasure. It can deduce martial arts or meditate on problems. In other words, if you encounter a bottleneck, you can cultivate here and enter a dreamland state, and then you can deduce how to break through the bottleneck. This is naturally quite amazing, no wonder this group of people meditate here. It is not necessarily a bottleneck, it can be a breakthrough in martial arts, but when you cultivate to a high level, you feel that it is difficult to break through. This Divine Dream Island is undoubtedly a good choice, but if you want to come here to cultivate, it depends on personal contribution. Although everyone here is a genius, geniuses also have bottlenecks. For example, the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven in front of him has a bottleneck. This is not a shameful thing, if there is no bottleneck, he would have already rushed all the way. Of course, Tianyun does not have a bottleneck, the real difficulty is the problem of experience. But experience accumulates, there is no bottleneck at all. That's right, this Divine Dream Island is extremely mysterious. You can even cultivate and perceive in your dreams. The Purple Crown Heavenly Monarch pulled Lin Ming over and smiled. There isn't much time left, so hurry up and cultivate. When the cultivation is over, we will go and meet with the other senior brothers. Tianyun nodded and sat down to cultivate. Soon, The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven entered into a state of cultivation, but he did not immediately fall asleep, but began to draw lottery. He still has 2 lottery chances that have not been used. This time he has free time to see what he can draw. He felt that he should draw a repeat. After all, he has been drawing the same thing recently. It is really not a feeling. Of course, there is no problem with drawing a repeat. After all, this can save a lot of crazy points. It is still a good choice. Lottery. Then a huge lottery will begin to appear in the void and began to spin in front of him. He silently activated Luck Aura. The powerful Luck Aura enveloped him. He wanted to see what he can draw. Finally, the needle of this lottery will stop at the martial arts type. Martial arts? Yi Tianyun was startled. This was the first time he had seen this type of martial arts. However, he was still looking forward to it. After that, the crystal box fell to the ground. He picked it up and opened it, and a familiar martial technique entered his eyes, the Skyquake Divine Technique. Sky Shaking Divine Art, strengthened version low-grade reincarnation level martial art, able to greatly increase one's weight, shocking the heavens and earth. Enhanced version. Yi Tianyun was delighted. The heaven-shaking divine art was still very useful, but it was already at max level. Previously, the heaven-shaking divine art was only at the heaven rank at its maximum level, which wasn't particularly high. Now that he had drawn a higher version, it meant that he could continue to level up. Under the violent gravity, what wouldn't he crush? Not bad. Although it was a repetition, he still felt very happy. After all, he liked this kind of martial arts very much. Come to think of it, the martial arts he knew were still relatively few, especially the high-level ones. The previous pile was basically trash, and the highest was only at the heaven tier. If there were no reincarnation tier martial arts or above, it would be impossible to look at it. Again. Yi Tianyun drew again, and the huge lottery will continue to spin. Every time he got something, it would make him excited. After all, this was a brand new lottery wheel. Even if he got a repetition, he would still be able to get a higher level one. He still felt that it was not bad. Ding! The needle of the lottery wheel finally stopped on martial arts. It was still on martial arts. This made him laugh. He didn't expect that he would get what he wanted. The crystal box fell from above, and he held it in his hand. Looking at the crystal box, he shook his head and smiled. I hope it will give me another surprise. Shortly after, he slowly opened it, and a brand new martial art appeared in front of him, Flying Divine Art. Flying Divine Art, low-grade reincarnation level martial art, able to greatly increase one's speed and agility. Best matched with the sky-shaking divine art. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. This flying divine art could be matched with the sky-shaking divine art. When using the sky-shaking divine art, due to the increase in weight, both speed and agility would be greatly reduced. Now that the flying divine art could greatly increase speed and agility, it was indeed an excellent match. When used together, it would be successful in battle. He didn't expect to get a good reward in 2 lottery draws, which made him feel very comfortable. Should I continue to draw? Yi Tianyun looked at the current crazy point. There was still a lot left. Before, he was willing to use it for lottery draw, but now if he didn't draw, he wouldn't be able to get a good martial art. Killing others can get a good martial art, but it seems that it is not as good as the lottery draw. Unless he gets a more powerful heavenly path martial art, then there is still some hope. Forget it, I will use it for the time being. When I am in urgent need of it, I will draw again. Yi Tianyun didn't continue to draw. After all, a lottery draw costs tens of millions of crazy point, which is still quite painful. If he draws some ordinary points, it will be even more painful. When he wanted to cultivate, he found that there was a shocked gaze on the side. When he turned his head, the first thing he saw was not who was looking at him. He found that there are countless light spots constantly shrouding and gathering around him. Unknowingly, his body has gained hundreds of billions of EXP. What is going on? So much star power automatically gathered around him. This is amazing. This is too strange, we tried our best to absorb it, but he is actively gathering the star power. What is this situation? Does he have some kind of treasure that can attract the surrounding star power, so that he can cultivate effortlessly? All of them were stupefied, and they felt even more envy and jealousy. If they were able to obtain such a treasure, then it would undoubtedly allow their cultivations to improve greatly. Junior brother Tianyun, what is this situation? Did the elder give you some treasure? Purple Crown Lord of Heaven next to him was shocked. Tianyun's whole body is shrouded in light spots, how can they not be shocked? Tianyun remembered that his luck aura is not turned off. It seems that the luck aura caused the surrounding star power to gather. He was so focused on the lottery draw that he didn't pay attention to the situation around him. He didn't expect the luck aura to have the effect of guiding the surrounding star power, which shocked him. He immediately turned off the luck aura, and just when he stopped, the surrounding light spots quickly disappeared, but there are still some slowly gathering, but it is not as scary as before. You can even attract the star power if you have good luck. Chapter 1102. Tianyun didn't expect that luck aura and luck value would have such an effect here, which made him feel very magical. There was no such situation in the outside world, but in Divine Dream Island, the star power would come to him on its own initiative. This undoubtedly greatly increased his cultivation speed and made it less strenuous for him. Although the star power here was very rich and he could absorb a lot with a casual breath, when he really absorbed it, it was like pulling something from the wall. Because the star power was fixed by heaven pilfering divine ground, if he wanted to absorb it, he had to spend a lot of effort. Tianyun took the initiative to approach Tianyun. The gap between them was huge, making the surrounding cultivators envious. They didn't know what kind of treasure he was holding to have such an effect. They didn't know what treasure he was holding, he was completely relying on his own luck value to attract them. If others didn't have such an effect, it meant that their luck value was not good. When he turned off the terrifying luck aura, the light quickly disappeared, leaving only a small amount of star power that came to him. Junior brother Tianyun, what's wrong, don't you want to use that treasure? The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven saw the star power around Tianyun gathering towards him. This is not a treasure, I absorbed it on my own initiative. Tianyun shrugged helplessly. He wanted to keep using luck aura, but the consumption of luck aura was calculated by 1 second, and the consumption of crazy point was too much. Is this ability so magical? The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven enviously said, it seems that the martial arts you practice is quite special, we can't absorb so much. Immediately, he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. After all, Tianyun was not a treasure, he couldn't enjoy it, he could only rely on himself. Tianyun ignored the gazes around him and closed his eyes to cultivate. He wanted to see what this divine dream island could deduce for him. As he immersed himself in it, he soon felt that he had entered a strange dream, he felt that he was facing a crazy heavenly tribulation. In front of him, there were countless divine thunders, covering every corner of the world, leaving him nowhere to escape. This is the heavenly tribulation that the 9 refinements Earth Lord is going to undergo. In this dream, Tianyun saw an exaggerated scene. He was surrounded by divine lightning, and it was much stronger than before. It felt like they weren't even on the same level. It was more like they were going through some kind of punishment. But that was all. That was all there was to the image, and nothing else. Even if he woke up and entered the dream again, the result would still be the same. Divine Dream Island wasn't able to deduce many scenes. At most, it could provide 1 or 2 scenes. It was obvious that Tianyun only had one scenario in mind, and that was to face this terrifying godly lightning. As for whether or not it was a test that the 9 refinements Earth Lord had to face, he was not very clear on this point. He only felt that the divine lightning around him was extremely terrifying. It made him feel powerless, as though he was facing a divine lord. Suppressing the world. If my heavenly tribulation becomes like this, it will be too difficult. I need to improve in all aspects. Tianyun frowned. He felt that the difficulty wasn't ordinary. Even if he activated his crazy damage mode, he might not be able to withstand it. This was the reason why he was worried. If it was like usual, he could casually blow it up with a punch. It was just that his improvement was limited. After all, cultivation was the foundation of the foundation. Without a foundation of cultivation, it would be difficult to resist just by relying on defensive equipment. It shouldn't be the 9 refinements Earth Lord's heavenly tribulation. If that's the case, then no one will be able to pass it. Tianyun shook his head, denying this information. This was an attack from a divine lord. How could it be the 9 refinements Earth Lord's test? After all, he had very little information. He wasn't sure if it was the 9 refinements Earth Lord's heavenly tribulation. After feeling it several times, he finally stopped. Instead, he cultivated here. He began to absorb the star power around him, and it quickly surged over. Obtained 3 billion experience points. 1 billion experience points. 2 billion experience points. His EXP kept rising, and the EXP he gained was quite insane. Compared to the EXP he gained in the Life Shrine, it was dozens of times more. No wonder it was said that this was an excellent place to cultivate. Cultivating here for a month was equivalent to a few years outside. Of course, in reality, he didn't stay here for a month. He speculated that from the consumption, it was far more than a month. It could be at least 2 to 3 months. Elder Go Huang had said that a month was for the outside world. It was different inside, and time passed more slowly. As for how long, it depended on the consumption of the jade pendant. If it was long, it might take a year and a half to use up. If it was fast, it would take more than a month. He maintained his cultivation state here, absorbing experience crazily. This was under the condition that he didn't use the crazy experience mode. If he used it, he would be able to obtain 1 to 200 billion experience points every time. With this speed, he would definitely be able to break through and level up faster. It seems like there's no pressure to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord. Like this, he sat in meditation and cultivated. It was quite good to be able to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level here. As time passed, he crazily absorbed the experience here. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he finally heard a clear and melodious sound. Ding! Congratulations to player Tianyun for successfully breaking through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level. Do you want to level up now? Not for now. Tianyun wasn't in a hurry to level up. If he stayed on Divine Dream Island, how could he casually level up? No matter what, he had to leave here to level up. He immediately opened his eyes. The original scene was still reflected in his eyes. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was still cultivating beside him. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. I've been cultivating here for almost 2 weeks. Time really passes quickly. He took out the jade pendant. A small part of it had already been consumed. It seemed that it could last for a few more months. In just 2 weeks, he had successfully broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level. The effect was truly surprising. Following that, he didn't disturb the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. He turned around and flew out of Divine Dream Island. He planned to find a place to break through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level and complete his task. Not long after he left, the 3 cultivators on Divine Dream Island opened their eyes at the same time. They glanced at each other and could see a hint of ruthlessness in each other's eyes. Chapter 1103. After Tianyun flew away, he quickly found a remote place to stop, and after a little look around, a strange smile appeared on his face. Level up. Then, he began to attract the heavenly tribulation. He believed that the heavenly tribulation he would encounter would not be the same as the one he saw in Divine Dream Island. If that was the case, he would have to attract it. This was the only way he could greatly reduce the effects here. Ding! Congratulations to player Tianyun for successfully breaking through to the 9th refinement Earth Lord cultivation. Boom! At this time, the sky began to be covered with dark clouds. Countless bolts of divine thunder began to flash everywhere. However, it was not like in the image where there was divine thunder everywhere. There was only the terrifying divine thunder above his head. Under the interference of the heaven thief divine land, it began to be enraged. However, even if it was enraged, it did not seem to be a big problem. At most, it would be several times stronger than the 8th refinement Earth Lord breakthrough. It was normal for it to be strengthened, but as long as it was not at the Divine Lord level, Yi Tianyun did not need to worry about it. When he was preparing to cross the tribulation, 3 figures suddenly appeared and surrounded him. They looked at him with sneering eyes. "Friend, we will give you 2 choices. Either you accept the strengthening effects of the divine thunder, or you throw out all your treasures. Choose for yourself." Hee, this is the 9th refinement Earth Lord breakthrough. If he succeeds, he will really become a super genius. Thinking back, I did not dare to break through to the 9th refinement Earth Lord. The 8th refinement Earth Lord is already terrifying, let alone the 9th refinement. That's right. If he dies, it will be a great loss. These 3 were the cultivators who first found the place where Yi Tianyun was crossing the tribulation. Now that they saw him moving alone, they immediately chased after him. Who knew that when they saw that Yi Tianyun was crossing the tribulation, they could take advantage of him? The 3 of them were Hu Hua Lord of Heaven, Hu Yu Lord of Heaven, and Hu Xing Lord of Heaven. They were not brothers, but they had a good relationship. Their names were the same, indicating that they had a good relationship. Yi Tianyun ignored their threats. He knew from the start that someone was hiding nearby. He couldn't be bothered with them. Since they were here to give away experience, he naturally wouldn't mind. All 3 of them were geniuses. Although they weren't the best, they were still pretty good. After killing them, he would gain a lot of benefits. Throw all the treasures to you. Yi Tianyun smiled faintly. That's right. This is your only choice. Otherwise, if we interfere a little, how much do you think the power of your heavenly tribulation will increase? They moved closer to Yi Tianyun and said in a threatening tone. This kind of threat was usually effective, especially when the higher the cultivation, the more terrifying the power of the heavenly tribulation would be. The heavenly tribulation didn't care if the other party did it on purpose or not. As long as the person got close to the heavenly tribulation would be angered and its power would increase. In its opinion, it was here to help defend, so it would increase its power. Therefore, the person undergoing the tribulation must have a protector. Otherwise, it would be extremely easy for them to be threatened. The 3 people in front of him were a very simple and crude threat. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the heavenly spring god realm? Yi Tianyun looked at them indifferently, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Kid, don't you know that talking like this will easily lead to a fatal disaster? Hu Hua, the Lord of Heaven's eyes were cold, and the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Yi Tianyun's words were indeed asking for death. If the other party didn't have the intention to kill him, his words would completely enrage them and they would kill him to silence him. Fatal disaster. Yi Tianyun looked at them and smiled faintly. Do you think I'm an idiot? If I really listen to you, I'll just die a little faster. You've been planning to kill me from the start. Otherwise, you'll definitely be severely punished if this matter is exposed. The choice they gave him was just to toy with Yi Tianyun before he died. How could they really let him go? Once he was exposed, he would be severely punished. The 5 god realms had already set the corresponding rules. They absolutely couldn't kill each other. Once discovered, they would be jointly punished by the other god realms. However, this kind of thing could only be said verbally. If they couldn't find out anything, they could only let it go. With so many geniuses here, it was impossible to kill the wrong person. That would be too severe, and no god realm would be willing to do that. As for soul searching, it was not very possible. With their situation, they definitely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. If something went wrong, who would compensate them? Looks like you're not stupid. Since you can see it, then there's no need to say anything more. Die. Before he finished speaking, Yi Tianyun pounced and flew directly towards them. He didn't care about the heavenly tribulation at all. After he rushed over, he scared them. They originally wanted to threaten him, but who knew that Yi Tianyun would directly kill him, ignoring the heavenly tribulation in the sky. You want the heavenly tribulation to become stronger, right? Then let's play something more exciting. Yi Tianyun quickly circulated the flying god technique. With a whoosh, his speed instantly increased. In the next moment, he killed his way to the weakest lord of heaven, Hu Yu. He grabbed him and directly flew above the heavenly tribulation. Lord of Heaven didn't even have time to react before he was already caught. As they ascended, the power of the heavenly tribulation suddenly increased, and thick divine thunder immediately struck down. Even a heaven monarch would have to retreat from such a terrifying power. Lord of Heaven wanted to struggle, but he was firmly held in place. The terrifying power made him feel how powerless his struggle was. Quickly let go of me. Lord of Heaven saw the terrifying divine lightning and was scared out of his wits. No problem, I'll let you go. Get up for me. Yi Tianyun suddenly kicked. With a dong sound, Lord of Heaven was directly kicked into the heavenly tribulation. With a boom sound, the divine lightning ruthlessly struck down and directly penetrated Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven's body. Heavenly Lord Hu Yu barely managed to block it, but his body was already charred black, and he seemed to have suffered some injuries. Following that, another strengthened divine lightning struck down from the sky and ruthlessly struck Yi Tianyun's body. However, it only left a smear of charred black on his body and then quickly disappeared. His recovery speed is quite astonishing. Lord of Heaven didn't even fall to the ground. Yi Tianyun tightly grabbed the divine spear and fiercely threw it. With a poochie sound, the spear pierced through the person in the sky. He coldly looked at them and said, "Don't you want to attract the heavenly tribulation? Come." The other two are still foolishly standing on the side. This series of actions is too fast, so fast that they didn't react. Their own brother was nailed in the air by Yi Tianyun, unable to move at all. He didn't die, but he was nailed in the air. If a few more divine lightning struck down, wouldn't he turn into charcoal? Chapter 1104. Yi Tianyun didn't give them a chance to recover. He swept the heavenly divine spear in his hand and cut Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven, in half. It was as easy as cutting a fragile piece of tofu. Ding! Successfully killed Hu Yu, Heavenly Lord. Reward, 870 billion EXP, 15 million crazy points, 5 million SPs. Reward, 10,000 killing technique, mid-grade reincarnation level martial art, broken teeth sword, high-grade reincarnation level weapon, ancient spirit necklace. Ding! Successfully killed Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven. Reward, 100 billion EXP, 10 million crazy points, 5 million proficiency. Reward, 1 lucky draw ticket. With the addition of 64 times experience points, he gained more than 800 billion experience points, which was really awesome. He had to admit that killing these experts was the fastest way to gain EXP, and he could also get a lot of treasures. It's just that there were no rare ones. If he could get a heavenly Tao martial art, it would be even better. Unfortunately, they didn't have this kind of heavenly Tao martial art. They did have a grade 2 divine domain heavenly Tao martial art, but they weren't qualified to practice it. Second brother. When the two of them saw Heavenly Monarch Hu Yu's corpse being dismembered, they immediately let out a blood-curdling scream. Anger immediately came out, and without hesitation, he rushed towards Yi Tianyun's side. They have always been acting together, but they didn't expect that this time, their brother was killed in a blink of an eye. "I will kill you." Hu Yu, Lord of Heaven, roared and rushed towards Yi Tianyun with all his strength. The phantom of Tsung Ming immediately appeared behind him. This phantom of Tsung Ming was actually a giant python. Poisonous gas was quickly released from his body, causing the sky to turn pitch black. Heavenly Lord Hu Hua did the same. He unleashed his strongest power, wanting to avenge Heavenly Lord Huyu. But as soon as they came in, the heavenly tribulation struck them. They could only brace themselves to resist. Boom! The two of them were knocked back dozens of meters, and their bodies were charred black. The power of the heavenly tribulation against them was much stronger than against Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun withstood the heavenly tribulation and flew towards them. What? You want to rob us with that little ability of yours? Yi Tianyun sneered. The two of them were both shocked and angry. The divine lightning that triggered the heavenly tribulation was too strong. It was already good enough that they could withstand it. If it were any other ordinary Lord of Heaven, they would have been struck to death. In other words, if their cultivation was at the 5th layer of the Lord of Heaven, then the power of the divine lightning that struck down would at least be at the 6th or 7th layer of the Lord of Heaven. This was the punishment for the cultivators who had trespassed. Although it could make the heavenly tribulation stronger, it was also protecting the person undergoing the tribulation. In any case, the power of the heavenly tribulation that Yi Tianyun endured was much stronger, but overall, it was not as abnormal as theirs. Damn it, should we wait for him to finish his tribulation? Hutsing Lord of Heaven quickly retreated, not daring to continue intruding into the heavenly tribulation. That's fine, let's let him successfully break through to the 9th layer of the Earth Monarch realm, then we'll make plans. Hutsing Lord of Heaven could only brace himself and leave. After being struck by the divine lightning, they immediately sobered up, not daring to continue approaching. This was like a bucket of cold water being poured on their anger, temporarily cooling them down. No need to make plans, just follow me to the tribulation. Yi Tianyun laughed and pounced towards them, scaring them into running away. But how could their speed be faster than Yi Tianyun? Phoenix Bloodline, open. Flying God Art, open. Double speed was activated consecutively, and his speed directly exploded. He turned into a ray of light and swept over, instantly catching up to Hutsing Lord of Heaven, scaring him to the point that his courage was about to explode. What kind of speed is this? He stuttered. This speed was really too terrifying, almost catching up in the blink of an eye. Didn't I say, how about staying and crossing the tribulation together? Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed, and he swung his fist fiercely. Hutsing Lord of Heaven quickly waved his snake sword to block. Yi Tianyun completely ignored the snake sword, and still punched down. Sky-shaking God Art. Violent power superimposed on his fist, like a huge planet condensing on his fist, together with two kinds of martial arts that increased speed. Under the situation where the power was not weakened, it still had astonishing speed. Boom! Hutsing Lord of Heaven's hand that was holding the snake sword trembled, and his palms were directly shattered by this violent power, and he was sent flying along with his sword. Boom! A big pit was formed on the ground. Third brother. Hutsing Lord of Heaven was scared to death. He didn't expect that both of his brothers would be defeated. What the hell are you screaming for? Yi Tianyun sneered, it's too late to escape. In the next moment, he rushed forward with sky-shaking God Art, and in a flash, he arrived in front of Hutsing Lord of Heaven, and slammed his body into Hutsing Lord of Heaven. There was no fancy move, just a simple collision. Hutsing Lord of Heaven directly collided with Hutsing Lord of Heaven, and the violent power couldn't be stopped at all. The upgraded sky-shaking God Art is too terrifying, coupled with flying God Art, it is like a huge flying planet. Who would dare to stop it? Ding! Successfully killed Hutsing Lord of Heaven, gained 930 billion EXP, 20 million crazy points, 5 million SPS. At the same time, gained Meridian Snake Sword, high-grade reincarnation level weapon, 10,000 kill extinction, ancient spirit bracelet, low-grade reincarnation level. Ding! Successfully killed Hutsing Lord of Heaven, gained 100 billion EXP, 10 million crazy points, 5 million proficiency, and a lottery ticket. A series of sounds popped up, letting him gain a lot of experience, but he is still far away from leveling up. I'm really sorry, I didn't expect it to be so powerful, it exploded with just one hit. Yi Tianyun spread his hands helplessly. He thought that at most he would be seriously injured, who knew that he would turn into a blood mist with just one hit. The sky-shaking god art's power is certainly enhanced, plus their physique is not as strong as Yi Tianyun. Immediately, he turned his gaze to Hutseng Lord of Heaven. Hutseng Lord of Heaven was lucky. He used the Meridian Snake Sword to resist his attack, otherwise he would really be blown into a blood mist by the punch. Of course, the situation is not much better now. The Meridian Snake Sword seems to be embedded in his body. He looks like he is dying. The violent fist directly punched the weapon into his body, almost piercing through it. How could he not be on the verge of death? Boom! Then, a bolt of divine lightning struck down and ruthlessly struck him to death. Ding! Successfully killed Hutseng Lord of Heaven, gained. Ding! Successfully completed a realm-jumping kill, gained. Chapter 1105. The three lords of heaven had been easily killed by Yi Tianyun, as if he were drinking water. They were all geniuses, but how could they be his match when Yi Tianyun's strength had increased so much? They were all geniuses, but not every genius had a terrifying awakening ability like Sir God Yuqin. Thus, dealing with them wasn't difficult at all. In particular, when combined with the heaven-shaking divine art and heaven-soaring divine art, the strength of these two divine arts directly exploded. This was a nearly overwhelming victory, directly crushing the opponent's strength. It could even be said that this was the might of a 9 refined Earth Lord. After breaking through to the 9 refined Earth Lord realm, his strength had increased by a great deal. It could be said that his strength was several times that of an 8 refined Earth Lord. This was truly an existence on a different level. No wonder it was said that a 9 refined Earth Lord was a true Earth Lord. I'll break this heavenly tribulation first. Yi Tianyun looked up at the heavenly tribulation and quickly flew up. He revolved the soaring heavenly god art and combined it with the heaven-shaking divine art to scatter the heavenly tribulation. After breaking this heavenly tribulation, a rich star power began to descend from the heavens, blessing his body and strengthening the planet within him. He sat there meditating to recover, feeling the astonishing energy. This is the feeling of a 9 refined Earth Lord, it's really good. Yi Tianyun felt his entire body relax. As he was about to finish, he heard a loud shout from the side. You actually killed our 3 senior apprentice brothers. Then, 2 cultivators flew over. As they saw the blood and corpses strewn all over the ground, they were immediately enraged. From this familiar aura, they were undoubtedly their fellow apprentice brothers. Soon after, other cultivators flew over. The fluctuations of tribulation here had clearly been sensed by the cultivators of Divine Dream Island, thus they all flew over. Even the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven flew over. As he saw the situation, his complexion changed. Junior apprentice brother Tianyun, you are too reckless. Even if we really want to do it, we can't do it here. We have to do it in a remote place. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head and smiled bitterly. If he was discovered, Yi Tianyun would be punished. Yi Tianyun was from the same sect as him, so he would definitely side with his own people. As for the cultivators from the other god territories, how they died had nothing to do with him. The other cultivators flew over. When they saw this scene, they all revealed gloating expressions. They were all witnesses to this scene. I did kill 3 of you. That's right. Yi Tianyun stood up and readily agreed. At the same time, he retrieved the spoils of war from the corpses. Among them was the jade pendant. With the 3 jade pendants, he could stay here for a longer period of time. When the time came, he would have someone send him a message. Then, Elder Go Huang wouldn't stay outside for too long. As the other cultivators heard Yi Tianyun's straightforward reply, they couldn't help but be stunned. Then, they angrily cursed, "Put down your things. It seems you're here to rob us. How could your heavenly spring divine realm have such a disciple? Do you want to destroy the relationship between the god territories?" Once this accusation was placed on them, no one would be able to bear it. Yi Tianyun faintly looked at him and coldly sneered, "Destroy the relationship between the god territories? Then let's see who broke the rules first. As he finished speaking, he threw out a recording disc. Then, the previous conversation fell into the eyes of many cultivators. I'll give you two choices. Either hand over all your treasures, or we approach and increase the power of this heavenly tribulation. You obviously want to kill me to silence me. Don't take me for a fool. All sorts of images and sounds appeared in front of everyone. Tianyun wasn't a fool. He knew how serious the situation was. From the beginning, he had used the recording disc to record everything. As long as he could prove that the other party had threatened him first, everything would be fine. As soon as the recording was shown, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven rushed over and angrily cursed, "All right, you're the ones who really destroyed the relationship between the god territories. I didn't expect you to threaten my junior brother to pass the heavenly tribulation. If my junior brother wasn't stronger, he would have been struck to death by the heavenly tribulation." The sudden reversal made the other party speechless. They were suppressed by the recording disc and had no power to refute. When the others saw this, they shook their heads. They didn't expect that Tianyun would still have a trick up his sleeve. This time, the one who would be punished was not Tianyun, but the other party. Not bad. To pass the heavenly tribulation, you really spent a lot of effort. I'll explain it to Elder Go Huang. When the time comes, I'll hold your god territory accountable. Tianyun said coldly. He didn't believe that these people didn't know that the Lord of Heaven and the others had done this. They must have known about it. Now that they failed, they became angry out of shame. Now that he had the recording disc, he didn't need to explain too much. The recording was the simplest and crudest explanation. This is all because they acted without permission and violated the rules. This has nothing to do with our god territory. We'll mention this matter to the elder. When the time comes, we'll properly discuss this matter. The other party's tone immediately weakened. Anger flashed in the depths of his eyes. He didn't expect that everything would be in vain, and he would die in vain. All right, when the time comes, I hope you can give a reasonable explanation. Tianyun snorted coldly. Then, he flew to the side of the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and said with a smile, "Senior brother purple-crowned, let's go." The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven nodded and left with his people, leaving the group of people looking at each other in dismay. This was really bitterness that couldn't be expressed. Instead, it caused a lot of trouble. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven gave a thumbs up and praised, "Junior brother Tianyun, you're really amazing. You even know to use the recording disc. Otherwise, it would really be impossible to wash away. This definitely has to be recorded. Otherwise, it would really be a big problem. With such a big commotion, if the other party were to accuse me, I really wouldn't be able to bear it." Tianyun smiled. He already knew how to do this. No matter what he said, it couldn't compare to the recording disc. Although the recording could be faked, there were no conditions to fake it here. Therefore, it wouldn't be considered fake. Right, I almost forgot to congratulate junior brother Tianyun. You've broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch level. That's really amazing. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head and said, "At most, I'll break through to the 8 refinements Earth Monarch level. Then, I'll break through to the Lord of Heaven. Otherwise, I'll definitely fail. This way, you'll become one of the few disciples in the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm who broke through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch level." How many people in the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm have broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch level? Tianyun asked. There won't be more than 10. You can imagine how heaven-defying you are, right? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said enviously, "In the future, you'll definitely be heavily nurtured. However, I have to remind you that you must become strong enough. Otherwise, when you break through to the Lord of Heaven level, you might die here." Chapter 1106. 8 Refinement Earth Lord breaking through to Lord of Heaven would be like dying, let alone 9 Refinement Earth Lord breaking through to Lord of Heaven. The further one breaks through, the more difficult it is to break through. It's not that Purple Crown Lord of Heaven doesn't have the confidence to break through to 9 Refinement Earth Lord, but he doesn't have the confidence to break through to Lord of Heaven. Without the confidence to break through to Lord of Heaven, everything is nonsense. I know this, I must improve myself to break through. Tianyun thought of the scene in Divine Dream Island. Is he really facing the heavenly tribulation to break through to Lord of Heaven? If that's the case, he really needs to improve himself, otherwise he will die. But breaking through to Lord of Heaven, he will have to face an attack comparable to Divine Monarch level. Isn't this a bit too much? At that time, he can only resist. He can't be as domineering as he is now. He can't destroy the heavenly tribulation with one punch. It's already good enough to resist the attack of Divine Monarch level. How can he destroy it with one punch? If he provokes the heavenly tribulation, it will release a stronger attack of Divine Monarch level. It will be absolutely fatal. Ding! Completed main quest, breakthrough to 9 Refinement Earth Lord, obtained 500 million crazy points, 500 million SPs, 500 million mastery. Ding! Successfully accepted main quest, breakthrough to 10 Refinement Earth Lord or Lord of Heaven level. Breakthrough to 10 Refinement Earth Lord, obtained 1 billion crazy points, 1 billion SPs, 1 billion mastery. At the same time, obtained the title, Eternal First Earth Monarch, broke through to Heavenly Monarch realm, gained 500 million crazy points, 500 million SPS, 500 million mastery. Choose one of the two main quests. You can choose to break through at will. What? When Tianyun saw the new main quest, he was dumbfounded. It's not that there are two main quests, but a new word appeared, 10 Refinement Earth Lord. 10 Refinement Earth Lord, isn't it only 9 refinement? How did a 10th refinement appear out of nowhere? He was extremely shocked. Junior brother Tianyun, what's wrong? When the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven saw Tianyun suddenly shout out, he felt somewhat baffled. Senior brother Purple Crown, I wonder if there's a saying about the 10 refinements of Earth Monarch? Tianyun calmed down, looked at him, and asked. 10 refinement Earth Monarch? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven immediately laughed and denied, I've never heard of such a saying. 9 refinements is the limit. There's no such thing as 10 refinements. Do you think that the other levels all have 10 levels, and that all Earth Monarchs have 10 refinements? That's right. Tianyun nodded. There's no such thing. The 9th refinement is the limit. I've never heard of the 10th refinement. If there really is a 10 refinements Earth Monarch, wouldn't it explode the heavens? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven smiled and said, it's fine. I thought about it a long time ago, but later I realized that there was no such theory. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven denied it without hesitation, believing that there was no 10 refinements Earth Monarch. Of course, Tianyun wouldn't say that there was really a 10 refinements Earth Monarch. The system wouldn't lie. Since it gave this condition, then it definitely existed. There was absolutely no way it could be fake. 10 refinements Earth Monarch, Tianyun's eyes flickered. If he succeeded, then he would obtain an additional special title, #1 Earth Monarch of all time. The effect of this title was absolutely powerful. He didn't know what additional effects it would have, but he would only know after he obtained it. However, would there be any special conditions needed to break through to the 10 refinements Earth Monarch? When he checked, there were indeed special conditions superimposed on it. 10 refinements Earth Monarch, the basic condition for breaking through is to condense a second planet in the body and circulate it. At the same time, the two of them need to share star power and reach a mutually supportive state. Otherwise, it will be judged as a failure. When he saw this condition, he frowned. Still need to condense a planet? This difficulty wasn't just a little high, especially when there were 2 planets. It was easy to cause problems. The most important thing was that there needed to be a core. It wasn't just a simple stone, but a planet with a core. Either he condensed his own core, or he dug it up and put it in. It had to be said that the difficulty was quite high. The main thing was whether or not he could condense a second planet with a core. Furthermore, they couldn't collide with each other, otherwise even he would die. The difficulty is really high. Tianyun shook his head. No wonder no one had succeeded in so many years. The conditions were so harsh. How could anyone succeed? Otherwise, there wouldn't be this strange title of #1 Earth Monarch of all time. What a domineering title. This was the first person to reach the 10 refinements Earth Monarch level since time immemorial. It seemed that it really was like the other levels. There were still 10 levels, but it was too difficult, so people didn't think there was a 10 refinements. Or perhaps it was impossible, so no one succeeded. As time passed and no one succeeded, they would naturally deny the 10 refinements Earth Monarch level. Although the difficulty is high, if there isn't any difficulty, then how can it be challenging? Tianyun roughly knew what the Divine Dream Island was, and what he dreamt of. It might be the heavenly tribulation of a 10 refinements Earth Monarch, or the heavenly tribulation that a 10 refinements Earth Monarch would encounter when breaking through to the level of the Lord of Heaven. This might even be a hint given by Divine Dream Island. A 10 refinements Earth Monarch, the #1 Earth Monarch of all time, would the heavens allow him to break through to the Lord of Heaven? Thus, the most terrifying divine thunder would descend. Whether or not one could resist it all depended on one's own ability. Then, he flew forwards with the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven didn't bring him back to Divine Dream Island, but directly brought him forwards. Let's meet up with the other disciples. That place is the best place to cultivate in the Heaven Thief God land. You have just made a successful breakthrough, so you must go there to consolidate your foundations. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven enviously said, you also obtained 3 jade pendants. You can stay here for a while longer. Senior Apprentice Brother Purple Crown, how much time do you have left? Tianyun asked. It won't be long. At most I will have less than 10 days before I leave this place. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven smiled. How about this? I'll give you this jade pendant. Tianyun selected one and handed it to the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven. If he obtained 3 jade pendants, he would be able to stay here for a longer period of time. The truth was that he didn't need to stay here for that long. Moreover, he felt that the Purple Crown Lord of Heaven was a good person. If he was given the least amount of time, it would be fine. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven quickly declined, Junior Apprentice Brother Tianyun, you absolutely cannot do that. You have just broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Monarch realm, so you need to consolidate your cultivation. Let me tell you clearly, when a 9 refinements Earth Monarch breaks through to the Lord of Heaven, there is only a slim chance of survival. Don't think that you are enough. The truth is that nothing is enough. His eyes were filled with determination. He was determined not to take the jade pendant that Tianyun gave him. Instead, he was extremely concerned about him. Chapter 1107. Tianyun was moved by the words of the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven. If it were anyone else, they definitely wouldn't have been polite with him and would have taken it first. It was simply far too difficult to enter this place. If one could stay a little longer, they would definitely do so. In particular, even though Tianyun still had 3 jade pendants, the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven still chose to give up. This action left Tianyun feeling a bit of admiration. There were very few people that could refuse like this. This proved that the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven was truly considerate of him. Senior Apprentice Brother Purple-Crowned, I have 3 jade pendants. I'll choose one less for you. It looks like you've already reached a bottleneck. I don't know when you'll be able to come here again. You don't need to be polite with me. You said that once I break through to the 9th refined Earth Lord realm, the elders will definitely vigorously train me. At that time, they will definitely give me more resources. It might not be too long before I can come here again. Tianyun insisted on giving the Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven the jade pendant. The Purple-Crowned Lord of Heaven was a good person, especially now that he had reached a bottleneck. This could be considered as giving him a favor. If he hadn't reached a bottleneck, then he wouldn't have stayed at Divine Dream Island for such a long time. He wanted to meditate and see if he could break through this bottleneck. Hearing Yi Tianyun say this, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven hesitated a bit. He clenched his teeth and said, "Then I owe junior apprentice brother Tianyun a favor. I have indeed encountered a bottleneck recently and I haven't been able to break through it. If junior apprentice brother Tianyun has any problems in the future, feel free to look for me at Sword Palace. I will definitely help you." Yi Tianyun certainly believed his words. At the very least, his favorable impression of him wouldn't be fake. When he looked at others, he looked at their favorable impression. If they had a low favorable impression of him, then that would be a lie. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was obviously not one of them. Thus, he was worthy of being friends with. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble senior apprentice brother Purple Crown. Yi Tianyun smiled. Then, he handed over one of the jade pendants. After the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven received it, he carefully put it away. This was a hard-won opportunity for him, so he naturally had to be careful. "Now, I can have another month to cultivate. Thank you so much." The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven had just checked the jade pendant and found that it could be used for at least another month, which was quite a long time. The other two jade pendants were about the same. The three of them had entered at the same time, so they had arrived at about the same time. Under the guidance of the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven, they soon arrived at their destination, the path of the Celestial Lord. The Celestial Immortal Path was actually a long passageway. As far as the eye could see, it was a long passageway that wound all the way up to the top of a mountain range. When they arrived, Yi Tianyun saw many cultivators sitting cross-legged on the passageway. To put it bluntly, they were sitting on the side of the main road. This path was very strange. There were no trees around it, not even spirit herbs. It was a very empty passageway. Only a few thousand meters away from the passageway were there all sorts of spirit trees and spirit flowers. Here, the passageway was bare, including the one leading to the top of the mountain. It was all bare. In fact, even that mountain was completely barren. It was extremely ugly to look at. However, this passageway attracted most of the cultivators who came here. All of them were sitting cross-legged there to cultivate. Yi Tianyun glanced over and saw that there were more than 100 people. These were all super geniuses from the 5 divine realms. Each of them had been nurtured at a great cost. Just the hundreds of people here alone would consume hundreds of jade pendants. The price was basically equivalent to consuming hundreds of heaven-level treasures. It was really extravagant. This was only one batch. After all, as time passed, another batch of people would be sent in. At that time, the consumption would be even more shocking. No matter how talented a cultivator was, without amazing resources, there was no way to stack up. There are really a lot of strong people. Some of them are even at the 8th or 9th level of the Lord of Heaven. It seems that they are going to break through to the Divine Lord realm. Yi Tianyun nodded. Breaking through to the Divine Lord realm wasn't a big problem here. After all, the star power here was much stronger than outside. If one couldn't break through here, then there was no need to talk about the outside. This is the Celestial Immortal Path, the best place to cultivate in the heaven-pilfering sacred land. Don't be fooled by its bare appearance. It's actually the best place to absorb star power. It's not like other places, where the rejection is stronger, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven explained. Why doesn't anyone climb up the Celestial Immortal Path? Yi Tianyun saw scattered people meditating along the way. However, the higher the mountain, the fewer people there were. At the very top, there was no one there at all. Because no one can climb up, so no one. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head and said, "In the legends of the Celestial Immortal Path, whoever can climb to the highest peak can become a Celestial Immortal." Celestial Immortal. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. A heavenly master's cultivation was stronger than a divine monarch's, which meant that they were the top experts in the 3rd-grade god domain. As a domain lord, Yi Tianyun felt no pressure at all. Climbing up and you can become a celestial immortal. Isn't that a bit too exaggerated? Yi Tianyun was puzzled. This is indeed a bit exaggerated, but if you really climb up, your chances of breaking through to become a celestial immortal in the future are not low. At the very least, your chances are much higher than most divine lords. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shrugged and said, "Anyway, I don't have to think too much about it. Right now, we don't even have the 8 characters of a divine lord, let alone a celestial immortal. That's a godlike existence." Tianyun nodded. This explanation was more reasonable. If reaching the peak really meant becoming a celestial immortal, then it was too exaggerated. There was only one possibility, and that was that after climbing up, one would have a celestial immortal comprehension, which would be of great help to breaking through in the future. This explanation was more reasonable. If someone said that climbing up meant becoming a celestial immortal, he would not believe it. Although the difficulty is quite high, many people still try to climb up. Tianyun saw many of them moving forward step by step. A group of Lord of Heaven powerhouses climbing up the mountain was really hilarious. Isn't that for sure? Coming here, one must try the celestial immortal path. Otherwise, coming here would be a waste. Moreover, this is the best place to cultivate. Cultivation is the main thing, and climbing up is incidental. There is no conflict between the two. Following that, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven flew down with him, and soon landed at the beginning of the path. "Junior brother Tianyun, you can start from here. Under normal circumstances, as long as you walk past a place, you can directly fly over it. There is no need to walk again," the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said. "So, you don't have to worry about leaving this place. Or, the next time you come, you will have to come back again," the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said. Chapter 1108. In many similar situations, one could only start from the beginning. One could not leave from the beginning and stay in the same place the next time they came back. This was how the path of the Heavenly Sovereign worked. If one could climb to the top of the mountain, one could fly over the next time instead of walking in from the beginning. This would undoubtedly save a lot of time. The key was that the concentration of astral power was completely different. It's indeed more humane. "Junior brother Tianyun, stay here for now. I'll go over first and wait for you to catch up. I believe that with your standard, you'll be able to catch up in no time. If there's any problem, just call me." After the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven explained to him, he flew forward. It was obvious that he had been here before. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was quite talented. It was normal that it was not his first time here. It was impossible for him to go up with Tianyun again. It would undoubtedly be a waste of time. Moreover, although the path was far, it was within sight. There was no need to worry that someone would disturb Tianyun. If someone were to disturb Tianyun, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven would see it immediately. Hence, there was no need to go so close. After the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven left, Tianyun turned his attention to the path of the Heavenly Sovereign. This name was really domineering. The path of the Heavenly Sovereign. Since it could be called that, there must be a meaning behind it. Becoming a Heavenly Sovereign, Tianyun lifted his foot and walked towards the path of the Heavenly Sovereign. As soon as his foot touched the ground, he immediately felt a stream of thoughts gushing into his head. This was not a martial arts secret manual. It was a kind of artistic conception. In an instant, he felt that he had fallen into an artistic conception. The next moment, he felt that he was in another world. He had transformed into a small farmer, farming and feeling the hardships of labor. However, Tianyun calmed his mind and quickly woke up from this artistic conception. He felt that he had been here for a few years. In reality, it was not that long. In reality, he had only stayed for a short while. The most important thing was that he did not move. This was the most important thing. He did not take a single step forward. He was directly frozen in place. So that's how it is. An illusion test? Tianyun's heart settled, and he immediately realized the problem with the Tao of the Celestial. He had to experience these illusions. It was just that this illusion was so real that he could really feel the hardships of the farmers. Fortunately, in the process of experience, the astral power around him kept surging in and turning into experience points. He found that the astral power here was indeed very dense, much denser than the astral power outside, so it was easier to absorb. The key was that he would be trapped in this illusion for a long time. By the time he woke up, the protective effect of the jade pendant would be gone. At that time, he would really die here. Thus, he needed someone to pull him back. Otherwise, he would definitely continue to fall into this illusion. However, it was just the beginning, so the difficulty wasn't that great. That was why the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven didn't come over to protect him, and he didn't explain it too clearly either. Everyone's situation was different, so there was no point in explaining it too clearly. After he calmed himself down, he continued to walk forward step by step. Because his mind was very calm, he did not feel any pressure at all, let alone falling into the illusion. As he kept walking forward, Tianyun was surprised to find that the absorption effect was getting better and better. This was similar to the Holy Hall of Life. The closer he was to the core, the better the effect was. It was the same here. The closer he was to the front, the more amazing the effect was, and the more experience he gained. As he walked forward quickly, he soon caught up with the new cultivators and continued to chase after the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. The entire celestial path was quite far, at least 100 miles away. Normally, if he flew, he would be able to reach it in an instant. However, it was different now. He walked forward step by step, and his speed would slow down. Of course, Tianyun just ran. He started to run forward continuously. When the crowd saw this, they looked at him as if he was an idiot. Is this kid crazy? If he were to rush into a special illusion in one go and accidentally get stuck inside, it would be troublesome. He seems to be from the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm. Are the geniuses from the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm all so arrogant? Forget it. Let them do what they want. They will die anyway. One by one, the cultivators shook their heads. They felt that Tianyun was crazy. Others walked step by step. At most, they would walk a little faster. They had never seen anyone running. Even the more arrogant geniuses would choose to climb step by step instead of rushing forward in one breath. That would bring about a huge negative effect. It would make the illusion effect of the celestial path accumulate. It seemed stable and could withstand the illusion. However, once one ran too far, the effect would be even stronger. To put it bluntly, every step would cause an illusion. It could be said that one step was a different world, and no one could escape. At most, they would enter the illusion when it accumulated to a certain extent. Then, they would break out of the illusion. The further they went, the more shocking the illusion would be. If they accumulated for a long distance, once they stepped into the illusion, they might not even be able to wake up. It would be fine if it was the same as the outside world. The problem was that once the jade was used up, they would die. They would be completely devoured by the heavenly pilfering divine realm. It's over. I didn't explain it clearly to him. He can't run so far in one breath. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven's heart jumped when he saw Tianyun rushing over. He knew that he was in trouble. Just as he was about to stop him, Tianyun suddenly stopped. It was obvious that he had entered the illusion. He ran a few miles in one breath. That's too fierce. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven took a deep breath. He estimated that Tianyun was facing a terrifying illusion. Generally, after falling into the illusion, one could forcefully break it. That was to carry the person away. Then, they would be able to leave the illusion. However, if they used external forces, they would have to start all over again. Therefore, if someone launched a sneak attack, it would be considered a failure. Of course, with so many people watching, who would launch a sneak attack? Unless they didn't want to stay here anymore. It was clearly stated that they couldn't attack each other. If someone did so and was seen by so many people, they wouldn't even know how they died. The 5 divine realms were aware of the problem here. That was why they made all sorts of rules to not attack each other. It was beneficial to everyone. Haha, that kid has fallen into the illusion. He has already run a few miles. With such an astonishing distance, it will take him at least a month. At that time, even his protective barrier will be gone. Hee, I think it will take even longer. It seems that this journey was wasted. What a waste. It's better to leave this time for me. I can walk up step by step. It's worth it. They all thought that Tianyun was a fool and that he was wasting his jade pendants. They thought that it would take a long time for Tianyun to wake up from the illusion, but the next moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and continued to run forward as fast as he could. Chapter 1109. It stood to reason that if one gathered so many illusions in one go and then fell into them, it would take a long time before they could break free. After all, after accumulating so many illusions, the difficulty would greatly increase. This wasn't the accumulation of many small illusions, but a direct increase in difficulty. Otherwise, they would have already started running instead of walking slowly. At most, they would walk a short distance and then stop, deliberately letting themselves fall into the illusions. This was the same as entering the accumulated illusions. After breaking them, it was the same as solving a small problem. This method was followed by many people. It was currently the safest method. If they ran like crazy, they would at most run a short distance, unlike Tianyun who ran several miles. This distance was too far. Once they burst out, they would wait until the jade pendant's protective shield disappeared and they might not be able to break it. This time was too long, so no one was willing to do this. It was just too dangerous. When Tianyun did this, he would be ridiculed. But who knew that when he broke it in seconds, everyone would be shocked, wondering if they were seeing things. It hasn't even been a few seconds, and it's already been broken. This is too exaggerated. I wonder if he didn't enter the illusions and just stopped to rest. Impossible, he must have entered the illusions. His aura fluctuations just now were different. Once someone enters the illusions, their aura will calm down, as if they were dead. If that's the case, then did he really break it in an instant? How did he do this? Everyone was dumbfounded. They all wanted to see Tianyun become a joke and be moved away. Who knew that nothing would happen to him, and he would even break it in seconds? This left them all stunned. Tianyun ignored their gazes and continued to rush forward. It was undeniable that the illusions here were very strong. But for him, these illusions were still within the range of what he could withstand. With his powerful spiritual force, he could directly break through any illusions. This was his spiritual force. It far surpassed the existence of others at the same level. Don't forget, he was also a powerful divine carver master. His spiritual force was definitely much stronger than others. In addition to his outstanding willpower, how could this small illusion stop him? Continue. Tianyun sprinted all the way up and continued to crazily throw out a few more miles. Then, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, he directly stopped where he was and entered the illusion. At this time, the crowd started discussing again, guessing how long it would take for Tianyun to wake up this time. No one thought that Tianyun would be able to wake up instantly. After all, the further he went, the more terrifying the difficulty would be. It was impossible for him to wake up instantly like before. It didn't take long for Tianyun to wake up. Although it was a little slower than before, the difference between the two was not that big. In less than half a minute, he would be able to break it. In theory, it was still an instant kill. The group of people was dumbfounded. The result was still the same. At most, they would be a little slower than before. They would not stay for a few days or even a month. Following that, Tianyun continued to rush forward, chasing after the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven was still quite far away. It was roughly more than 30 miles. He had already walked almost half the distance. No one knew how long it took for him to walk more than 30 miles. At least for now, it seemed that catching up with him was not a problem. Junior brother Tianyun, you really caught up with me so quickly. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head. What he said before was all encouraging words. He knew that Tianyun needed to move forward slowly. If he wanted to catch up, it would take a long time. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, he would close the distance by almost 10 miles. If he continued like this, he would really catch up soon. It had to be known that he had spent a full 2 months to get here. His progress was relatively fast. Who knew that Tianyun would catch up with him by almost 1/3 of the distance in a single breath? It was really a blow to him. The others looked at Tianyun. They didn't know where this freak had come from. How could he be so monstrous? The others from the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm were even more shocked. When did they have such a monstrous fellow disciple? The key was that he was a human. He could tell with one glance that he was a human, and he was an existence that could suppress everyone present. Tianyun didn't care about anything. He just kept running. Every time, he would run 2 to 3 miles, then stop to break the barrier. Then, he would continue to chase after him. Every time he broke the barrier, it would take a little longer than the last. However, the time was very short. It was only a few minutes, so it could be said that it was very short. At least, to them, it was really short. It should be known that when they walked this path before, even if it was a few hundred meters, it would still take them a few hours. Tianyun only needed a few minutes to cover the distance of 2 to 3 miles. This difference made them want to vomit blood. To be able to enter this place, they were all super geniuses. However, compared to Tianyun, they felt like a pile of shit. They couldn't be compared at all. How long has it been? He has already crossed more than 10 miles. Isn't he too fast? That's right. His speed can be compared to that Lord of Heaven. Let's not talk about that Lord of Heaven. He is really heaven-defying. He seems to be a 2nd or 3rd grade divine carver, right? It's really enviable. The heavenly cleansing divine realm has such a genius. I wonder how they trained him. They couldn't help but think of another genius who was so heaven-defying. Just like Tianyun, he had broken the barrier in seconds. He was even faster than Tianyun. However, he wasn't here for the time being. Thus, Tianyun's limelight had been stolen. Under everyone's gaze, Tianyun quickly rushed forward and soon caught up to the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven didn't move. He stayed in place and waited for Tianyun to catch up. He wanted to see how long it would take for Tianyun to catch up to him. It took less than a quarter of an hour. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven revealed a bitter smile. This was too fast. Senior apprentice brother Purple Crown, I've caught up. Tianyun arrived at the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven's side and smiled. Hey, junior apprentice brother Tianyun, aren't you too heaven-defying? How did you do it? How did you break such a powerful illusion so easily? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven asked. This is to use mental strength. Once you use it, the illusion will be shattered. Tianyun shrugged his shoulders and said, it's just that I spent more and more time. I've let senior apprentice brother Purple Crown see a joke. Chapter 11:10. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven didn't know what to say. Instead, he felt a little depressed. Why was there such a big gap between humans? Is this our fellow disciple? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven looked Tianyun up and down and said in surprise, a human with such abilities is really amazing. You are the first human I've seen so valiant. I've seen many humans before, but their talents were quite poor. Ahem, Yuhua Lord of Heaven, watch your words. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven knew the situation. If it was his own race being said like this, he would also feel unhappy. Thus, he hurriedly reminded his companion. I'm not wrong. Humans are indeed not generally of low status. Of course, I'm not discriminating against humans. I don't discriminate against any race. What I hate the most are those who are gluttonous and lazy. Their talents are obviously terrible, but they're not willing to work hard. Humans are the most hardworking race I've seen. It's just that their talents are too poor. It's very difficult to make up for it with just hard work. However, I'm still very impressed. It's just that their status is generally low. Their cultivation is too low, so their status can only be so. It's too difficult to change the status quo. Yuhua, Lord of Heaven, seemed to have opened a chatterbox. He started to speak non-stop, completely ignoring the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven's words. This junior brother Tianyun, Yuhua, Lord of Heaven, is like this. Sometimes, he likes to say such things. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven felt very embarrassed. It's fine. What senior brother Yuhua said is the truth. Humans are generally too low in talent. They can only rely on hard work to make up for it. Tianyun looked at the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. What the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said was not wrong. Moreover, there was no discrimination in Yuhua, Lord of Heaven's words. That's what you say, but there are still many bright spots. I've seen 3 human powerhouses before. Their talents are a bit poor. However, they worked together and showed great strength. The human race's ability to learn was still very strong. Of course, the most important thing is that there are many of them. Which divine realm doesn't have humans? Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, seemed to recall the past and smiled. 3 powerful human warriors. Tianyun narrowed his eyes and asked, Senior Martial Brother Yuhua, what are their names? The 3 of them moving together reminded him of the heaven-creating Divine King and the others. Maybe it was them. He had been out for so long, but he had not heard any news about them. It would be difficult to find them in the sea of people. Of course. One of them is the Lord of Heaven and Earth, the other is the Lord of Ancient Ming, and the last one is the Lord of Heaven and Earth. I even befriended them and drank with them. Their abilities are pretty good. Their cultivations are all at the 5th or 6th refinement level. It's really not easy for humans to reach such a level, said Earth Lord Yuhua with a smile. As expected. 2 beams of bright light shot out from Tianyun's eyes as he stared at Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, and said, Senior Martial Brother Yuhua, where did they go? Or did they say anything? I don't know. They said they wanted to wander around in the 2nd grade divine realms to see who would take them in. You know the situation in the 2nd grade divine realms. It's too difficult to take them in as disciples. If their talent is not up to standard, no one will take them in. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, shook his head and said, I don't know if they have joined any divine realms. It's not a good thing to be a lone cultivator. How many years ago was this? Tianyun asked hurriedly. Not long ago, probably a few years ago. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, thought for a moment, then smiled and said, Do you know each other? Yes, they are from the same hometown as me. Tianyun was very grateful for the information from Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven. At least, it proved that the 3 of them were still alive. No wonder they are so hardworking and cultivate with all their might. This is the first time I have seen people cultivate so hard. It feels like they are doing it for some purpose. They are not willing to tell me even when I ask them. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, shook his head and smiled. But never mind, we met by chance. It's not good for me to interfere with their situation. Tianyun nodded and clenched his fists. What else could they be after cultivating so hard? It must be to make himself stronger quickly so that he can return to the 3 realms to protect everyone. Little did they know, he had already solved the problem, at least for the time being. Where did they last appear? Tianyun asked. I remember it very clearly. It is in the 3 divine realms. It is a concentration camp for lone cultivators. Most lone cultivators go there. Sometimes, other divine realms recruit disciples there, Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven said. Thank you, senior brother Yu Hua, for the information. Yi Tianyun had already made up his mind. After he left, he would go and find their whereabouts. This was a pleasant surprise. He did not expect to ask about them here. They had contributed so much to the three realms. It was good enough that they were safe. Could it be that junior brother Tianyun wants to find them? Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven asked. Yes, after this is over, I will go and find them, Yi Tianyun said straightforwardly. Then I wish you good luck. The three divine realms are very big. They might not even be there anymore. Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven, shook his head and said, however, it is rare to see a human as strong as you. Let me tell you something else. The heavenly spring divine realm is very restless now. Be careful. Thank you. Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven, was able to do this because of the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven. Both of them did not discriminate against other races, and they did not discriminate against the weak either. They were able to treat each other calmly. Immediately, Yi Tianyun said goodbye to them and continued to run forward. He won't stay here with them, he will move forward step by step, he is still running. Do you think junior brother Tianyun will reach the end of the Celestial Lord path? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven asked. If he can maintain it, it should not be a problem. However, that is, Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven, said enviously. Heavenly Lord Yu Hua said enviously, I don't know how he cultivates. He is the weakest human, but he can suppress everyone. I am not sure about this. However, it proves that even the weakest race has a chance to make a comeback, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Yes, we also have to work hard, senior brother, the two of them looked at each other. Determination could be seen in each other's eyes. They were also carrying some kind of responsibility. Everyone had different responsibilities. Many people looked glamorous on the outside, but in reality, they were working very hard. Every cultivator here had a lot of responsibilities on their shoulders. However, everyone's situation was different. Yi Tianyun's responsibility was to protect the three realms. Everything was so simple. Apart from that, everything else was empty. The Celestial Lord Path. Chapter 11:11. Yi Tianyun continued to frantically rush up. He basically rushed forward for 2 to 3 miles. This distance was maintained, and it didn't take long for him to break through the illusion. The difficulty wasn't too high, and he could easily break through it. In one breath, he directly rushed more than 60 miles and reached the foot of the mountain. As long as he climbed to the top of the mountain, he would truly reach the end of the Empyrean path. He was really looking forward to what he could obtain at that time. It was just that in all these years, the number of people who could reach the end of the Empyrean path did not exceed 10. To be precise, only 8 people could reach the end of the Empyrean path. The reason why only 8 people could reach the end of the Empyrean path was simple. On the cliff of the mountain, 8 people's names were engraved. They looked very conspicuous. As long as one could pass the Empyrean path, they could leave their names on the cliff. This was a great honor. No one knew why there was an Empyrean path here, nor did they know how the heaven-pilfering divine land was formed. They only needed to know one thing, and that was that climbing the Empyrean path gave them a chance to become an Empyrean. The 8 names engraved on it did not all become Empyreans, but there were indeed some who did. The rest of the time was not enough. After all, climbing up didn't mean that one would immediately become an Empyrean. It was just another kind of enlightenment. I'm finally at the foot of the mountain. As long as I climb up this mountain, I can comprehend the Empyrean laws. Yi Tianyun shook his head. The difficulty wasn't high, but there was one thing that made him pleasantly surprised. The concentration of star power here was quite high, and it provided him with a lot of experience. Unknowingly, he had already gained a lot of experience. However, if he wanted to break through to the 10th refinement Earth Lord, he couldn't just rely on experience. He also needed to meet other conditions to truly achieve it. Unless he directly broke through to the Lord of Heaven, then he only needed experience and didn't need to specifically meet other conditions. In theory, this was the first time he had encountered a bottleneck. This bottleneck required other conditions to be met in order to achieve it. Just accumulating experience to level up temporarily wouldn't work, unless he chose to break through to the Lord of Heaven. That would be inferior. What he needed to do was to do his best. The 9th refinement Earth Lord breaking through to the Lord of Heaven would already be quite astonishing for anyone else. But to him, becoming the number 1 earthly monarch throughout the ages was his goal. Fellow disciple, how exactly did you do it? What treasure did you rely on? At this time, a young man on the side looked at Yi Tianyun with disdain. He was sure that Yi Tianyun did not rely on his own abilities, but on external forces. Yi Tianyun frowned. This guy was obviously from the heavenly spring divine realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called him a fellow disciple. Yi Tianyun glanced at him and ignored him. He lifted his feet and walked forward, not saying a word to him. Wait, do you know who I am? The cultivator blocked in front of Yi Tianyun, not letting him go. Why should I know who you are? Yi Tianyun was extremely disgusted with this kind of person. If they couldn't do it, they assumed that others couldn't either. Yo, you're quite arrogant. I'm your senior brother. You should be a little more respectful when you see your senior brother. You don't understand etiquette. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, was extremely dissatisfied. Senior brother? Is there a rule that says that I must be respectful when I see my senior brother and greet him? Yi Tianyun sneered and lifted his leg, wanting to go around him. He couldn't be bothered with him. Don't go. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven said coldly. What treasure did the elder give you? Otherwise, how could you break through the illusion so easily? Take out that treasure and let me have a look. I'm sorry, but don't think that everyone uses some treasure to help them and not rely on their own abilities. Yi Tianyun said coldly. You humans, what other abilities do you have? Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven laughed. How could you come here without relying on a treasure? What a joke. I don't know how you got in here, but you must have had a great encounter, right? Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, what's wrong? A Lord of Heaven walked over and asked. I was teaching a junior brother manners. Who knew that he wouldn't know what's good for him? He's quite arrogant. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, was extremely dissatisfied. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven. How despicable! Yi Tianyun raised his foot and walked forward, directly bypassing Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, ignoring him. Brat, if you have the guts, then try taking another step. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, was about to explode from anger. He was a senior brother, but he couldn't even call out to a junior brother. Yi Tianyun turned a deaf ear to him and continued walking forward. Each step was faster than the one before, and he walked further and further away. Damn it, stop him. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, rushed over and blocked Yi Tianyun's path. He said angrily, I told you to stop, but you dare to disobey me. A good dog doesn't block the way. Yi Tianyun said coldly. You actually called me a dog. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, flew into a rage. Do you believe that I won't throw you out and make you start all over again? Yi Tianyun looked at him coldly and sneered, if you have the guts, then try it. Even if it was an elder, he wouldn't have the slightest bit of respect, let alone a mere senior brother. Whatever the senior brother wanted to do, it had nothing to do with him. You're courting death. Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, roared angrily. Without hesitation, he slapped out with his palm. 6 layers of the Lord of Heaven's strength were used, and the sharp wind from his palm was no longer trying to send Yi Tianyun flying. Instead, it directly sent him flying. Scram! Yi Tianyun executed the flying god art, and his figure kicked out at an even faster speed. His foot landed on Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven's face, and he was sent flying out of the celestial sovereign path. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, rolled dozens of times before he managed to stop. At this time, his mouth was already swollen, and he was vomiting blood non-stop. This was because Yi Tianyun was being lenient. If he really wanted to kill someone, his head would have been smashed by Yi Tianyun's kick. Since he was in the heavenly spring divine realm, he should spare his fellow disciples' life. When the crowd saw this, they were all stunned. This fellow disciple killing each other was really exciting. Fortunately, the good guy wasn't in the illusion, or he would definitely have to start all over again. As long as he wasn't interrupted in the illusion, he wouldn't have to start all over again. But now that he was sent flying, no one knew if the other side would be able to take this lying down. You actually kicked Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, away. If the elder hears about this, you will definitely be severely punished. Another fellow disciple beside him scolded him. What a joke. If I didn't retaliate, I would have been sent flying. Don't tell me I didn't suffer any losses. Yi Tianyun retorted coldly. What a joke. Don't think that you have the elder's support just because you have the treasure given to you by the elder. I won't fight you today, but when I get out, I will definitely help Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven, seek justice for him. The Lord of Heaven didn't fight Yi Tianyun. Instead, he flew off to find Go Jian, the Lord of Heaven. What an idiot. Senior brother Yu Hua just finished speaking, and he immediately encountered such an idiot from the same sect. How impetuous. Chapter 11-12. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others also saw Yi Tianyun's actions. It hadn't been long since the fight started, but he had already sent their fellow disciples flying. His fiery temper made them all suck in a breath of cold air. Junior brother Tianyun, aren't you a bit too ruthless? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven looked a bit worried. Attacking a fellow disciple was a serious matter. Fighting was prohibited here. However, although it wasn't against the rules, it would be troublesome if the elders found out about it. How could the elders not be angry if they didn't cherish such a good opportunity and fought here? Hee, I just said that these guys were a bit arrogant, but they were immediately taught a lesson. Isn't this a good thing? They are all arrogant and think that others can't do what they can't do. Yu Hua, Lord of Heaven, immediately laughed. He felt that Yi Tianyun had done a good job. That's right, but won't those elders blame us? The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head. He felt that Yi Tianyun was too rash. Blame us? That depends on junior brother Tianyun's level, Yu Hua, Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Rules are dead. The one with the bigger fist is the real truth. If junior brother Tianyun gets closer to the end of the heavenly sovereign path, do you think those elders will blame us? Moreover, the cause of this matter is that those guys are too idiotic. They still want to see some treasure. I don't believe that the heavenly sovereign path has any treasure that can suppress that illusion. Even if it does, why didn't they give it to them, but to junior brother Tianyun? Even if you think about it, it's obvious. A bunch of arrogant idiot geniuses. Yu Hua, Lord of Heaven's words were really vicious. Fortunately, they couldn't hear it. Otherwise, they would definitely come to find trouble with him. Alright, just say these words in your heart. If those people know about it, it won't be good for us. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven shook his head. He felt that it was better not to say some words directly. It was obviously not good to affect him like this. Forget it, I can't be bothered to say anything more. Let's continue forward. I hope that junior brother Tianyun will charge forward and ruthlessly make those high and mighty geniuses suffer a loss. Do they think that they are invincible just because they have a slightly better background and a slightly better bloodline? Yu Hua, the Lord of Heaven, sneered. He felt that everything was so ridiculous. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven patted his shoulder, signaling him to calm down. He looked at Go Jian, Lord of Heaven, his eyes filled with the same coldness. For some people, there was no need to sympathize too much, and there was no need to befriend them. After sending the Lord of Heaven flying with a kick, Yi Tianyun continued to climb upwards. His speed remained the same as before, but for the sake of caution, he reduced his speed from 2 to 3 kilometers to 1 kilometer. Undoubtedly, it would take a little more time to climb to a higher level, but it was safer this way. Everything had to be done safely and not too rash. As expected, if he stopped every kilometer, he would still fall into a more difficult illusion. Originally, he didn't even need a quarter of an hour, but it became several hours, and it even became almost a day. This time was continuously pushed forward. This seemed to be a lot slower, but in reality, it was much faster than other people. Other people didn't even climb to the bottom of the mountain, and they already needed a few days to move forward. That was why Yi Tianyun needed so much time to reach the top of the mountain. It was really incomparable. There were only a few cultivators at the top, and there were at most 10 or so. Compared to the bottom, there were much fewer. In reality, those who could climb to the top were definitely not few. It was just that they weren't here. For example, the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven wasn't here. When they saw Yi Tianyun catch up and see that he was a human, they suspected that he had some kind of special treasure. Otherwise, how could he have broken through the illusion so quickly? Many people had this kind of thought. If it was any other higher level race, no one would have suspected him at all. It was mainly because he was a human, which was why he was so suspected. Yi Tianyun never cares about what they think, as long as he takes care of himself, that's enough. When he was more than 70 kilometers away, another cold voice came. Just now, you kicked Go Jian out of the Lord of Heaven. What do you mean by that? Yi Tianyun looked up. The one who questioned him was an expert from the 8th level of the Lord of Heaven. He looked extraordinarily handsome, and he was also a genius from the heavenly spring god realm. He seemed to have just come out of the illusion not long ago, but he didn't go down to help with what had happened. He just watched coldly from the side. I didn't mean anything. It was just a normal counterattack. Yi Tianyun looked at him and said indifferently, is there a problem? There's no problem. You can go back now. The flowing cloud Lord of Heaven waved his hand and said coldly. Why? Yi Tianyun's face was calm. He didn't show the slightest bit of anger, as if everything had nothing to do with him. Because I'm your senior brother. The flowing cloud Lord of Heaven said coldly. In the heavenly spring god realm, a senior brother has the right to order his junior brother. Anyone who disobeys will be sentenced to death. Yi Tianyun laughed on the spot. He looked at the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven and sneered. You're related to that Go Jian Lord of Heaven again. You're just using your position to avenge him, aren't you? As a senior brother, you have the right to order your junior brother. What a joke. I'm not your subordinate, and I'm not related to you. You think you can use your title as a senior brother to oppress others? To be honest, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen. If I had the right to walk to the end of the heavenly sovereign path, who do you think the elder would punish? Yi Tianyun almost wanted to hit him. This was the so-called power. If he was in danger, he could just forget about this order. But now, it was a matter of his future. If he let him leave, wouldn't that be equivalent to throwing away his future? Do you think you have the right to walk up? The flowing cloud Lord of Heaven mocked. You relied on a treasure you found somewhere to climb up here. If you really want to go up, do you think you can do it without the ability? My good senior brother, I wonder if your brains have been kicked by a donkey. Do you all think I relied on a treasure to get up here? Even I don't know which eyes of yours saw it. Yi Tianyun didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. Even if it's a treasure I obtained with my own ability. If there's really such a treasure, I'll throw it out for you to pick up. I dare say that you'll be like a dog and immediately rush to pick it up. What do you mean by using your own ability? It's all a bunch of nonsense. If you think you can't complete it, you think others will rely on external forces. What a bunch of idiots. If you look down on us humans, just say it. Don't talk nonsense in front of me. Time is very valuable here, understand? Chapter 11:13. The Zhongyan Lord of Heaven was instantly enraged. He looked at Yi Tianyun and said furiously, "Very well. What a sharp tongue. So what if I don't like you? The one with the bigger fist is the hard and fast rule. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I won't know why I'm the senior brother and you are the junior brother." He walked down angrily and wanted to fight with Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He clenched his fists and prepared for the strongest explosion. Even if it was the powerful Lord of Heaven, he was still confident that he could smash him with one punch. Especially when the other party was careless, it would be very easy to kill him in an instant. Who would have thought that an earthly lord would have the power to surpass most of the Lord of Heaven? Due to carelessness, everything was already over. Oh no, that Zhongyan Lord of Heaven is infuriated. When the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven saw this, his face instantly darkened. The difference between Yi Tianyun and the Zhongyan Lord of Heaven was so huge. If they really fought, Yi Tianyun would definitely be in danger. It was really unwise to make a move here. The cultivators from the other god territories all revealed gloating gazes. They didn't expect that there would be internal strife here. It was fine if it was an internal strife outside. At least it wouldn't consume the jade pendant. In this place, it could be said that time was money. Every second was equivalent to money. They didn't cultivate properly and were prepared to fight instead. It was really hilarious. They were very happy to see such a situation. Anyway, they weren't the ones who would suffer losses. They could watch the program and cultivate at the side. Why not? These fools. It's really as if they will die if they don't play high and mighty. Yuhua Lord of Heaven shook his head and said in a clear voice, "Senior brother Zhongyan, please calm down. It's not a good thing to cause trouble here. Wait until we get out, then we'll plan." How about that? They couldn't fly over, so they could only shout from below. Yuhua, the Lord of Heaven, wanted to persuade them to wait until they got out of here before looking for the elders to resolve the issue. This was nothing more than a delaying tactic. It was not to let the Lord of Heaven choose a good place to take revenge. If they really went out, how could the elders fight with them? The Lord of Heaven looked at them coldly, completely ignoring the advice of the Lord of Heaven. "I want to settle it here. What do you think?" He turned his head and looked coldly at Yi Tianyun. He didn't care what the situation was. Even if he was surrounded by enemies, he had to get rid of Yi Tianyun first. He had to protect his own dignity in case someone else chose to rebel against him like Yi Tianyun. Just as the Lord of Heaven was about to make a move, a figure floated past from the side and said indifferently, "Oh, bullying a junior here. Is this the style of the Lord of Heaven, Zhongyan? Previously, you were still hooting at me, saying that you wanted to fight with me. Now that I look at it, your magnanimity is really contemptible." A snow-white figure floated down from the sky. The beautiful figure that landed caused Yi Tianyun to stare. The person that appeared in front of him wasn't a stranger. It was the Divine Emperor Yuqin from before. After not seeing her for a short period of time, she had already broken through to the 9th refinement Earth Monarch realm. From the looks of it, she should be preparing to break through to the Lord of Heaven realm. However, in his previous life, he was the Divine Emperor Yuqin. The data of the appraisal I had been refreshed. He didn't expect that the Divine Emperor Yuqin would appear here. It made him feel very shocked. He originally thought that he wouldn't be able to see her again. Who knew that she would appear in front of him in the blink of an eye? It was truly shocking. "Lord of Heaven, flowing clouds, you are here." Zhongyan Lord of Heaven narrowed his eyes and looked at the Divine Emperor Yuqin. His eyes were filled with a scorching gaze. "Lord of Heaven, flowing clouds." Yi Tianyun almost swallowed his tongue. This person was actually the Lord of Heaven, flowing clouds? The crucial point was that she didn't even break through to the Lord of Heaven realm. How could she be called the Lord of Heaven? However, if you were to sense it carefully, it was really similar to the aura of the Lord of Heaven realm. The main reason was that as her cultivation increased, her soul was awakening more and more. Therefore, the aura that she emitted was naturally similar to the Lord of Heaven realm. This way, people would misunderstand her as the Lord of Heaven realm. This wasn't a problem. Yi Tianyun's appraisal eyes could see anything. Naturally, it couldn't be hidden from him. However, she had another identity. It seemed like she had joined another god realm and was able to successfully enter this place. It seemed like this wasn't her first time here. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to fly up so quickly. The Divine Emperor Yuqin slowly landed at a distance of 80 miles away. She was higher than the Lord of Heaven realm. She was the Lord of Heaven realm who was rumored to have the highest chance of reaching the top. Now that she had returned, she attracted the attention of many people. Does the Lord of Heaven realm want to reach the top this time? It's possible. This time, she might be able to reach the top. Even if she can't reach the top, it would be amazing if she could get close to the top. If she could reach the top, she would be the 9th name. I also want to carve my name on it. They all shook their heads and felt extremely envious. It would be great if they had the same ability. Lord of Heaven Lu Yun, become my woman. At this moment, the Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun looked at her and said in a deep voice. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone to exclaim endlessly. Who would have thought that at this time, the Lord of Heaven would actually speak such words? However, no one was jealous of Lu Yun, the Lord of Heaven, because she was a woman. It was impossible to be jealous of a woman. One day, she could also become another Lord of Heaven's woman, or his own woman. Therefore, there was no need to be jealous of them. All he had to do was conquer them. Now, the Lord of Heaven wanted to conquer her. He wanted to conquer her in front of so many people. This was really overbearing. Yi Tianyun looked at the Divine Emperor Yuqin, trying to figure out something from her expression. However, all he saw was calmness. He was not interested in it at all. Become your woman. The Divine Emperor Yuqin glanced at Yi Tianyun and said indifferently, if you want to become my man, you have to win against him first. As she spoke, she pointed at Yi Tianyun. In an instant, everyone's gazes gathered on him, making him the center of attention. Yi Tianyun was instantly stunned. It seemed that the Divine Emperor Yuqin wanted to use him as a shield so that he could stop these idiots. Win against him. The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun sneered and said, this guy, does he even need to win? That's right, I don't need to win. You have already won. Yi Tianyun looked at the Divine Emperor Yuqin and said, he has already won against me. According to the rules, he can become your man, right? Yi Tianyun's reply made them all dumbfounded. Why did he admit defeat in the blink of an eye? The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun was stunned. Then, he laughed and said, what a good junior brother. You are really flexible. Very good, I am starting to admire you a little. The Divine Emperor Yuqin clenched his fists. His heart was about to explode. He didn't expect that Yi Tianyun would not play according to the rules and actually admit defeat. He had no dignity at all. Chapter 11-14. Don't you have any intention of protecting your own dignity? The Divine Emperor Yuqin gritted her teeth and looked at Yi Tianyun with a bit of resentment. This was a man who had won against her, and yet he admitted defeat so easily. This made her very unhappy. No, I just don't want to be a shield. Yi Tianyun shrugged. This isn't a shield. I just want them to compare. If you can't even win against me, you want to become my Taoist companion? The Divine Emperor Yuqin shook her head. Even if she really did win against Yi Tianyun, she would not become his Taoist companion. How could the cultivators here compare to her ambition? She only said this to give them a standard. If they couldn't even reach this standard, they would be dreaming if they wanted to marry her. If that's the case, you won't be able to marry in this lifetime. Yi Tianyun shrugged. No one can win against me, including you. After saying this, he grinned. His calm voice was filled with boundless arrogance. After listening to Yi Tianyun's explanation, everyone was furious and began to curse Yi Tianyun. Didn't he just have a little bit of skill? How could he be so arrogant? Yi Tianyun's words were undoubtedly saying that he wasn't targeting anyone, but that everyone here was trash. If they really used him as a standard, then the divine Emperor Yuqin would be single for life. How could such arrogant words not anger everyone? Originally, the Lord of Heaven had changed his opinion of him, but now he was furious. How arrogant! This is the Lord of Heaven Cloud I know. The divine Emperor Yuqin was not angry at all. He covered his mouth and chuckled. He was very happy. She liked this. Yi Tianyun's previous behavior made her very unhappy. When everyone saw the two of them talking, they immediately knew that the two of them must know each other. Otherwise, they wouldn't talk so intimately and set such a standard. Seeing the two of them flirting with each other, the Lord of Heaven said angrily, "It's fine as long as you beat him." "No problem, let's duel now." The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun rushed in front of Yi Tianyun in a few steps, looked at him coldly and said, let's duel over there." The Lord of Heaven seemed to have gone mad. He wanted to fight with Yi Tianyun and crush him with one punch so that he could win the heart of the beauty. More importantly, he wanted to make up for his humiliation. He didn't expect that the woman he fancied would have such a good relationship with his junior brother. "Hold on, do you think I'm talking about this kind of duel?" The divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him and sneered, "I'm talking about the celestial venerable Tao, not a martial arts competition. Before I leave, let's see which one of you has a better result. I can stay here for 2 months. Let's see which one of you can beat him in the end." The divine Emperor Yuqin was definitely not referring to a martial arts competition. With such a huge difference in cultivation levels, there was no meaning to it at all. Moreover, this was the celestial venerable Tao. It was a competition to see who could go further. So it's a competition of the celestial venerable Tao. This is even simpler. The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun retracted his gaze and turned his gaze to the front again. It was better to use this to determine the outcome. In any case, he was also going to climb up, so let's see who could go further. I'm not interested, but I'm going to climb the celestial venerable Tao anyway. You guys can do whatever you want, but don't drag me down. Yi Tianyun couldn't be bothered with them. Are you planning to back down? The Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun stared at him with burning eyes. Back down? Yi Tianyun sneered and said, I've never backed down. I just want to say that you guys can do whatever you want. If you can surpass me, then come at me. After saying that, Yi Tianyun couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. He raised his foot and walked forward, bypassing the Lord of Heaven Zhong Yun. Brat, I want to see how long the treasure in your hand can last you. Even until his death, he still believed that Yi Tianyun had used a treasure to climb up, not his own strength. This made Yi Tianyun a little angry. This guy was an idiot. It was useless no matter how many times he said it. Then, Yi Tianyun directly climbed up. At the same time, he transmitted his voice, Why are you here? You even changed your identity and joined another divine realm. You know how to find resources to cultivate, but don't I know? The divine Emperor Yuqin transmitted his voice, The celestial venerable Tao is a good place. In my previous life, I almost reached the top, and now I'm challenging it again. If I can reach the top, my success rate of breaking through to the celestial venerable Tao will greatly increase. Is the celestial venerable Tao that amazing? Yi Tianyun asked in confusion. Of course. Don't think that only the 5 divine realms control this place. In fact, there are often 3rd-grade divine realms coming here to ask for a spot. 2nd-grade divine realms can't stop them, so they can only obediently give up. The divine Emperor Yuqin said indifferently, Legend has it that this stolen heaven holy land is a treasure that was lost by an invincible expert. 3rd-grade divine realms have been coveting it, but they can't take it away. They can only send people here. Even third-grade divine realms can't take it away. Tianyun was shocked. It seemed that this stolen heaven holy land was not simple. Third-grade divine realms are not invincible, unless stronger existences come. However, stronger existences probably won't care about this stolen heaven holy land. They have more amazing treasures. The divine emperor Yuqin laughed at himself. He felt that everything was so insignificant. Tianyun nodded. He knew that there was always someone stronger. To them, this was a land of treasure, but to some peerless experts, it could only be trash. Climb to the peak of the celestial realm. Tianyun felt that he had gained some motivation. He wanted to see what the truth was. Then, he continued to accelerate forward until he reached the place where Heaven Monarch Zongyun was at. The Lord of Heaven also increased his speed, but he didn't dare to rush too far. He would only walk a few hundred meters each time before stopping to break the illusion. Tianyun was very violent. He still sprinted 1 mile each time. He was much faster than the Lord of Heaven. Similarly, the Divine Emperor Yuqin wasn't slow either. Like Tianyun, he also sprinted 1 mile. She almost reached the end in her previous life. Now, with the support of her soul from her previous life, her speed was naturally not slower than Tianyun. In fact, she was even faster. Looking at this chase, the people behind could only watch from afar. They couldn't catch up at all. Only the geniuses in front could participate in this chase. However, some cultivators weren't interested. They all took it slow. Some participated in this chase. They didn't confess like the Lord of Heaven, but they wanted to win against Tianyun before confessing. Doing things first and then expressing them later was undoubtedly the best choice. It was more low-key and reliable. Tianyun didn't care about them. He used himself as the standard and continued to rush forward. He fell into the illusion again and again. He felt that he had passed through one world after another, becoming different existences and comprehending the various forms of life. Chapter 11:15. When Tianyun walked this Empyrean Tao, it was not simply clearing it and be done with it, but carefully comprehending the emotions within. Since this kind of test was given, there must be its own reason. Otherwise, why would it appear here? The path to becoming an Empyrean was very bumpy and difficult. To succeed, the price needed to pay was extremely high. There were many ways to break through to Empyrean. As for which method to choose to break through, that depended on the individual. The Empyrean Tao here, Tianyun believed that it was definitely an Empyrean who carved his breakthrough method here, so that future generations could carefully comprehend it. This Empyrean powerhouse was considered an extremely conscientious existence. It was just that what the true meaning was, that was not very clear. I reckon that after climbing this Empyrean Tao, I'll be able to know the thoughts of this Empyrean powerhouse. Tianyun smiled and continued to climb forward rapidly, maintaining the same speed all along. He started catching up to the others bit by bit and was even very close to catching up to Zongyun Lord of Heaven. Zongyun Lord of Heaven was extremely anxious in his heart. If this carried on, he would definitely be caught up by Tianyun. At that time, he would lose face to the extreme. Previously, he was still hooting at Tianyun, saying that he could easily shake him off. Who knew that now, he was pulled closer and closer, starting to be caught up. This kid is so strange. Just what kind of treasure is it, to be able to clear it so quickly? Could it be that he really relied on his own ability to come up? Impossible, it's impossible for the human race to be that powerful. The human race has always been relatively low level. Talent is so low, how can he possibly rely on himself to come up? Zongyun Lord of Heaven would never believe that Tianyun could have this ability. The human race had always been so low level, how could he possibly turn things around? It was impossible for a salted fish to turn around, it would only get smellier the more it turned. Amidst his disbelief, Tianyun was already gradually closing in on him, rapidly closing from the originally not short distance. In the end, when the distance between the two people was less than 100 meters, Zongyun, Lord of Heaven, was utterly flustered. Just how long had it been and Yi Tianyun already caught up? This speed was very astonishing. Just what kind of treasure did you use? This is clearly cheating. Zongyun, Lord of Heaven, shouted. Cheating? Yi Tianyun's tone was filled with disdain. Only this guy could think of such a thing. That's right, you cheated. Otherwise, how could it be so fast? You're cheating. In order to cover up his own shortcomings, the Lord of Heaven could only retort like this. What a joke. Even if he's using treasures, that's his own ability. If you have a treasure, it's also your ability. You feel like you've lost, so you're looking for excuses. I look down on this kind of man the most. He's a sore loser. The key is that it's not the end yet. It's meaningless to admit defeat now. The Divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head at the front. He felt that Zongyun, the Lord of Heaven, was really funny. He looked at him with more and more disdain. Even if they had a good impression of him before, it would all disappear. Needless to say, he didn't have a good impression of him in the first place, and now he hated him even more. Is there such a thing as cheating these days? As long as it was on him, no matter how he used it, it wouldn't be considered cheating. There's never too much deception in war. What fairness! If he really had this treasure, he would have used it without saying anything. It was simply disgusting. The Lord of Heaven's face turned green and white. He didn't expect to be ridiculed by the woman he was pursuing. It made him feel like he had eaten a fly. I'm just saying. It's still unknown who will win. The Lord of Heaven clenched his teeth and started to rush forward crazily. He was much further away than before. Yi Tianyun took a glance at the back and shook his head. This idiot was purely seeking death. They were sprinting within their own estimation and not acting recklessly. The Lord of Heaven was acting recklessly. He was completely enraged by the Divine Emperor Yuqin. Actually, you don't have to speak up for me, Yi Tianyun said to the Divine Emperor Yuqin. I'm not speaking up for you. I just feel that he's disgusting. He has already cultivated to the level of the Lord of Heaven, yet he still says such childish words. Even I can't stand it anymore. The Divine Emperor Yuqin was speaking the truth. She was very unhappy with the Lord of Heaven. There was no other reason. All right. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders. It seemed that the Lord of Heaven wasn't qualified to be his opponent. The only person who could be his opponent was the Divine Emperor Yuqin. Of course, there weren't any opponents here. Anyway, reaching the top depended on one's own ability. There was no limit to the number of spots, and there was no such thing as first place. Immediately after, Yi Tianyun continued to rush forward. Although the other cultivators didn't say anything, they still rushed forward silently. However, no matter how fast they rushed, they couldn't be as fast as Yi Tianyun. Not only did they fail to catch up to Yi Tianyun, but they were also left behind by him. I can't see through you anymore. You don't seem to be a reincarnation. How can you break through the illusion so quickly? This was what the Divine Emperor Yuqin was most puzzled about. Forget it. After all, she had the soul of a previous life. What did Yi Tianyun have? The soul of a previous life? She couldn't sense it. As for what treasure he used, she couldn't tell either. I don't know. I broke through the illusion so easily. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders. His walking speed started to slow down. He started to feel that the illusion here was a little strenuous. He had to slow down. Broke through it so easily. The Divine Emperor Yuqin rolled her eyes. She knew that Yi Tianyun wouldn't tell the truth. Of course, Yi Tianyun wasn't telling the truth. The reason why he could break through the illusion so quickly was naturally because he had the support of various titles. In addition, he had his own abilities and his own experiences. All of these combined together allowed him to break through the illusion so quickly. As for what treasures he used, he didn't have any. He completely relied on his own strength to rush up. After which, they didn't talk much. Yi Tianyun continued to climb. There wasn't much time left. The further he went, the more time he needed. He was even more than the divine Emperor Yuqin. The gap between the two of them was starting to show. The divine Emperor Yuqin had lived many more years than Yi Tianyun. He had even lived an extra life. In addition, he had passed through this place once and almost reached the peak. He would definitely be more stable and faster than Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun didn't compete with her. After all, he didn't intend to compete with her. This wasn't a battle to ascend to the heavens. So what if she was faster than him? He wouldn't get any rewards anyway. Following the two of them, they advanced triumphantly and left the others far behind. Even the third person was miles ahead of them. They weren't on the same level. As time passed, the gap between them would only get bigger and bigger. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others looked at the two of them in a daze. Junior brother Tianyun is amazing. He isn't inferior to the flowing cloud Lord of Heaven. Chapter 11:16. No one knew if the Lord of Heaven would be able to wake up from the illusion quickly. He would be done for if he exceeded the time limit. Yi Tianyun would be too lazy to save him. As for whether the others would help, he did not know. In any case, the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others could not help. Even if they wanted to help, they would have to get closer. They were so far away that it was impossible for them to save him. Yi Tianyun could not be bothered with these things. He kept walking forward, and the distance between them gradually shortened. He looked up and saw that there were still 3 miles in front of him. He would successfully reach the top of the Celestial Lord path. This was not too difficult for him. It was the same for the divine Emperor Yuqin. The two of them were only a few hundred meters apart. This is where I'm stuck. The test is too difficult. It's completely different from the previous ones. Of course, everyone's situation is different. I hope you can pass this hurdle. The divine Emperor Yuqin took a step forward and stepped into a special area. His surroundings were shrouded in a special light. At this time, Yi Tianyun was surprised to find that the area he entered was an absolutely safe area. The jade pendant on his body was no longer being consumed. It was as if he had entered a safe place. There's such a situation. Yi Tianyun thought for a while and rushed forward. He thought he could rush past the place where the divine Emperor Yuqin was. When he stood side by side, his entire consciousness was instantly sucked in. He didn't even have the slightest ability to resist before he was sucked in. It was completely different from before. If he had forced himself to hold on, he could have walked a longer distance. Now, he could not. It was as if he was stuck at this point. When he stepped on it, he was immediately sucked in and forced into the illusion. The people below were shocked when they saw this. They did not expect that the jade pendant would not be consumed when he walked up. This meant that he could stay there forever without worrying about the consumption of the jade pendant. This made them very envious. As long as he did not consume the jade pendant, he could stay there and cultivate. It did not matter even if he was stuck. As long as he could stay there, his body would absorb the astral power on its own and slowly become stronger. However, the key was that they were so close to the finish line. For them, every step was so difficult. How could it be so easy for them? He easily reached the end of the heavenly sovereign path. If he continued walking for a few more miles, he would reach it. Reaching the end, one would be able to comprehend something left behind by an Empyrean. Just thinking about it made one envious. They were all wondering why they didn't climb to the other side themselves. Little did they know how much energy Yi Tianyun needed to climb to that place. He had experienced too many illusions. Although it seemed like he had broken them very quickly, in reality, he had been in the illusions for over 1,000 years. It could be said to be 1,000 years in one glance. At the same time, Yi Tianyun felt that he had entered a strange space. What is this space? Yi Tianyun looked around and realized that he had actually arrived at a withered forest. The surrounding plants had all withered, and many spiritual herbs had also withered. This made Yi Tianyun's heart ache. These elixirs were quite precious. Although it was just an illusion, why did it feel so real? He felt like he had truly entered a real space. It was not like before, where he had turned into a farmer or a soldier to participate in some things. He had truly been sucked into a strange space. The difference was that his soul had entered, not his body. Could this be an independent space of the heavenly pilfering sacred land? Yi Tianyun guessed. In any case, this was definitely not an ordinary illusion. It was very different from the previous trials. After walking for a while, Yi Tianyun wanted to fly up and observe his surroundings. However, he discovered that he couldn't fly at all. His flight was completely sealed, which surprised him. He immediately understood. It was normal for such a phenomenon to occur. After all, this was a different space, so it was normal for there to be restrictions. However, this way, he wouldn't be able to see the entire area. As he was thinking about how to leave this place, he suddenly heard a deep voice. It has been a long time since a suitable person has come here. I don't know how many years it has been. The voice was deep and hoarse, as if it was a 100-year-old man speaking. While he was puzzled, the withered plants in front of him suddenly regained their vitality and restored their original appearance. However, the restored area was only a small part. It was just a path that led him forward, as if it was guiding him forward. Yi Tianyun didn't doubt it. Even if he was careful, it was useless. This space belonged to this person. According to this situation, as long as the other party didn't let him go, it would be difficult for him to leave this place. Since it was difficult to escape, he might as well go and see what was going on. He followed this restored path. As soon as his feet stepped on the grass, Yi Tianyun immediately felt a comfortable life force surging, making him feel comfortable all over. Compared to before, the difference was like heaven and earth. This gave him a feeling that this was a real space. It was just that his soul had been moved here. As he went deeper, there were more and more spirit herbs in front of him. The life force also became denser and denser. It was no longer that strange energy. Finally, after walking for a while, he saw an old man sitting at a table in front of him, pouring tea and drinking by himself. The table and chair he was sitting on were all grown from tree vines. It just happened to be a table and chair. After Yi Tianyun walked in, the old man turned his head, looked at him and said, "I didn't expect that the suitable person this time would be so young." The old man looked at him. Yi Tianyun also looked at the old man. Rather than saying that the person in front of him was an old man, it would be better to say that he had white hair and a ruddy complexion. Other than his white hair, his complexion was no different from a young man. This really surprised him. What surprised him was not the appearance, but the strange energy that this person emitted, forming a strange aura around him. Artifact spirit? Yi Tianyun looked at him up and down. To be able to discover his situation, it was definitely not simple. However, the old man in front of him didn't feel like a person. Instead, he felt like a mass of energy. In a top-grade treasure, there must be an artifact spirit. In other words, it was a soul derived from the treasure. To obtain this treasure, one must tame this artifact spirit. Only then would one be able to possess it. If one didn't have enough strength, forcefully subduing it would instead cause a backlash. This was the same as the artifact spirits in the three realms. His current reincarnation grade weapon, on the other hand, didn't have an artifact spirit. Artifact spirits were nurtured. It wasn't something that could casually appear just because the grade was high. That would be too common. Truly powerful treasures had artifact spirits. Chapter 11:17. This was the space of a treasure, Yi Tianyun immediately deduced. The appraisal eye also gave an accurate judgment and displayed the information of the old man before it. Decay, able to forcefully revive all withered spirit herbs. At the same time, it can forcefully increase the effects of spirit herbs, greatly enhancing them. The true name of the old man in front of him was Decay Transformation, which meant to turn the rotten into the miraculous. This ability was truly formidable. To be able to revive withered spiritual herbs and the like. This kind of ability was basically impossible to achieve. Only by relying on these treasures could it be possible to achieve such a magical effect. His eyes lit up when he heard that it could strengthen the effects of elixirs. The old man smiled faintly. You guessed right. This old man is the artifact spirit of this space. You can call this old man Decay. Compared to the others, you know a lot more. Decaying space, what a straightforward name. Tianyun looked at him and asked, then what is the meaning of this? I was moved down from the path of the Celestial Lord, and now you want to test me? From the looks of it, this doesn't seem like an illusion. It's different from before. That's right, I want to test you. This was indeed not an illusion, but a real internal space. Actually, it's just a space within me. It's a test that Master specifically set up for me. As long as you meet the requirements, you can come down and take the test. Whether it is in terms of physique or talent, you have already fulfilled the requirements. Therefore, you are qualified to be my master. Especially in terms of physique, you seem to have a very strong life force, which is very compatible with my attributes. After listening to this explanation, Tianyun was stunned and looked at the accessories on his body. Are you saying that not everyone will come down to take the test you give them? Tianyun asked. That's for sure. Different cultivators have different tests. Your body is filled with an extremely strong life force, which is suitable for this test, the old man explained. Tianyun was silent. He had not taken off his longevity suit. When he was in the Celestial Sovereign Path, he switched to the longevity set. That way, he could strengthen his soul. On the surface, it seemed like it could only heal injuries, but in reality, it could also heal the soul. Thus, in order to break the illusion, he had to switch it up. Who knew that after changing, it would become such a test, causing him to have a strange expression? What kind of test would he face if he were to put on the ancient desolate suit? Tianyun's expression didn't change at all. Instead, he said calmly, compared to that, I'm more interested in knowing what kind of ability you can provide me. Decay didn't say anything. Instead, he lightly waved his hand, and a withered spirit herb in the distance floated into his hand. Tianyun judged from the withered spirit herb that it should be a third-level spirit herb. This is a god realm level third-level spirit herb, not a mortal realm level spirit herb. Shortly after, a ball of green light appeared on Rotting's hand, and a surge of life force surged out, pouring into the withered spiritual herb. In a blink of an eye, this withered spirit medicine actually already recovered to its original state. Not only did the third-grade spirit herb's spiritual energy not weaken, it actually became slightly stronger. This old man's ability is decay. It could restore any withered spirit herb back to its original state. If it's a normal spirit herb, it can raise its grade. Decay's gaze turned green, looking very strange. However, the wood attribute's spiritual energy that gushed out of his body was very shocking. Tianyun's eyes lit up. Although the appraisal I already informed him, he was still very shocked. After all, this was his first time seeing it. He would definitely be shocked. To be able to restore a withered spiritual herb back to its original state, this was definitely a heaven-defying existence. In reality, no matter how strong a wood attribute ability was, it was difficult to restore a withered spiritual herb back to its original state. Some special spiritual herbs had already begun to wither when they were plucked. Even if they were placed in a jade box, it wouldn't slow down the speed of their withering. Therefore, some of them had to be made immediately after being plucked. There couldn't be any delay. Otherwise, if it was delayed for a while, the effects would be greatly reduced, and the effects would be too low. This kind of ability was definitely powerful. Most importantly, it could raise its grade. This was also very attractive. This ability isn't bad. However, to obtain this kind of ability, I don't think it's an easy task, right? Yi Tianyun narrowed his eyes. There was no free lunch in this world. If he could get it just like that, he would be underestimating these weapon spirits. Which of these weapon spirits wasn't a sly old fox? They already had their own sentience. How could he give them away for free? Especially since this was a test from a heavenly venerate. The difficulty would definitely be high. One had to know that even the divine Emperor Yuqin was stuck at this stage. This proved how difficult it was. Although the test she would go through would definitely be different from his, the difficulty wouldn't be too different. Decay retracted his energy. At the same time, he threw the spiritual herb in his hand to the side. Then, he sat down and took a sip of tea. At the same time, he gestured for Yi Tianyun to sit down. Yi Tianyun wasn't in a hurry. He followed suit and sat down. The teacup beside him seemed to be prepared for him. After pouring himself a cup of tea, he took a sip. It was sweet and fragrant. This was a rare good tea. This is good tea. I wonder if the process will be like this tea, bitter at first and then sweet. Yi Tianyun shook the teacup and looked at Decay. Decay squinted. That will depend on one's own ability. If one's ability isn't enough, it will always be bitter. Then, Immortal stood up. After taking a few steps, he said, over the years, there have been many suitable candidates. However, those who can truly own me can be counted on one hand. It's been too long since the last suitable candidate. To own this decay space, one must be strong enough to truly control it. If you can't obtain its approval, then don't even think about becoming my master. Decay turned around and looked at Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun said calmly, I don't know what kind of topic you gave me. But what about the previous suitable candidates? Can you tell me how they are now? Decay looked at Yi Tianyun and smiled. Those who can become the master of the decay space can be counted on one hand. However, the number of suitable candidates who came in is not small. Those who come in only have two choices. The first choice is to become the master of the decay space. The second choice is to be completely eliminated. Decay's voice didn't contain any coldness or animosity. It sounded very calm. Completely eliminated? Yi Tianyun asked curiously. That's right, completely eliminated. This test only has one chance. The next time you come, you won't be able to try it here. You can only try another space. Decay smiled faintly. Chapter 11:18. Does that mean your masters have already passed away? Yi Tianyun asked. If their masters hadn't passed away, why would they leave these treasures here? Every single one of them was so valuable, especially the entire heaven-pilfering divine ground. They were all powerful treasures that even a grade 3 God realm expert would covet. We don't even know whether our masters have passed away or not. Our goal is to become the test servants. It's that simple. The old man said solemnly. The artifact spirits would obey all their previous masters' orders. As for why they did so, they didn't need to know. They only needed to know what to do next. Yi Tianyun frowned as he pondered. This heavenly venerable's way of doing things was really unconventional. He couldn't figure it out. This was equivalent to giving away treasures. He wouldn't give them away for free, right? Could it be that your master is choosing a successor? Yi Tianyun asked. Sorry, I can't tell you. The old man remained tight-lipped. If you want to know, you only need to pass my test. If you can't pass, you can choose to leave. Then let's cut the nonsense and get straight to the topic. Yi Tianyun didn't ask any more questions. In any case, the other party wouldn't answer, so there was no need to pursue the matter. Although he didn't know what the mysterious heavenly venerable was thinking, since he had given them away, there must be a reason. In his opinion, it was very likely that the heavenly venerable was choosing a successor, or doing something for him. Otherwise, there was no way he would give something away for free. Unless it was an extremely generous existence. The problem was, he had never seen such a generous existence before. At the very least, the heavenly venerable would accept someone as his successor. Only then would it be more believable. The old man's eyes narrowed into slits as he smiled. This topic isn't that difficult. You just need to cook something that I like. Wait. Yi Tianyun raised his hand, signaling the old man to stop. Instead, he asked doubtfully, "You're saying that the test is cooking?" "Yes, what's the problem? Although you're in soul form, you can still move the things here. Hence, you only need to cook one dish to pass the test." The old man said. "What the hell? I'm saying, why is there a cooking test? Wasn't it a battle or some sort of test? Instead, you want me to cook?" Yi Tianyun's head was about to explode. He was not allowed to do anything, but he was actually asked to cook. She had been cultivating all this while, absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. She didn't need to eat, but now she was cooking with him. It would be better to let him fight or carve a few hundred divine seals or something. Xiaoqin knew a little about these things, but to tell him how to cook, this was really a scam. "That's right. My test is to cook. If you don't understand, you can leave now. Have a safe trip. I won't be sending you off." The decaying old man stretched out his hand and gestured for Yi Tianyun to leave. "Did you come up with this cooking topic yourself, or did your master suggest it?" Yi Tianyun braced himself and asked. "I thought of this myself." "What's the problem?" "The dishes were cooked by my master before, and I just want to eat the dishes that my master cooked before." He stood up with a nostalgic look on his face. "I really want to eat that dish again. I don't know how long it's been since I've eaten it." Yi Tianyun looked at him and said helplessly, "All right then. What spirit medicine was used to make that dish?" As an artifact spirit, he could move around outside and was no different from a real person. He could eat to increase his spiritual power. An artifact spirit was equivalent to half a living person, so eating wasn't a problem. It had to be said that this heavenly venerate was really different. He seemed to treat them like family. Otherwise, why would he cook for them? The decaying old man shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. How would I know what spirit medicine was in it? I only remember the texture. It looked like molasses, but it was sweet and sour. It had a different taste." He was immersed in his memories, as if he had a special fondness for this dish. But when he said it out loud, it made people confused. It was too general. Rather than a dish, it was more like a dessert. However, there were also many dishes that had the same taste. There was too little information on all of this. Rather than saying that the difficulty wasn't simple, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. The description was so simple and not too detailed. There were thousands of spirit medicines. Who knew what was used? Making a dish that he liked was very straightforward, but also very vague. But these words, Yi Tianyun could feel that they were true. This decaying requirement was that simple. There was nothing mixed in. But the simpler something was, the harder it was to make. There's so little information. Do the other tests have the same requirements as yours? Yi Tianyun said helplessly. Not really. It varies from person to person, the decaying old man said. Yi Tianyun thought for a while. It was indeed about the same. Outside, there were 8 people who successfully reached the end. This meant that the 8 people in front definitely passed the test. I don't know what spirit medicine was used or how to make it. There's too little information. Yi Tianyun felt very helpless. There was so little information. No wonder no one became his master. If it was simple, why would I need your help? The decaying old man rolled his eyes. Tianyun sighed deeply and said, "Is there any limit to the number of times?" "There isn't. Feel free to try. You can take the spirit medicine around and I will help you restore it to its original state," the decaying old man said. Hearing that there was no limit, Tianyun heaved a sigh of relief. If there were only a few chances, the difficulty would be too high. With so little information, how could it be easy? No wonder all those who came before failed. You gave too little information. It's basically useless. Tianyun shook his head. The decaying old man said, "This is my test. How the other artifact spirits test is their business. As for me, this is the test." He was so inflexible. Other than eating dishes, he did not use anything else as a test. This kind of thing was so troublesome, but Tianyun still felt that it was better to fight it out. After all, there were so many spirit medicines and spirit fruits. There were probably hundreds and thousands of types. Even if it was just one material, there would be thousands of choices. If it was two materials, then it would be like beating someone up. The combination would increase instantly. It could be said that there were many types at once. Unless one of the materials was fixed, the combination of 1,000 materials would not be as simple as 1,000. It would be a terrifying number. Pa! Tianyun slammed the cup in his hand on the table and said in a low voice, "No problem. This master must be me." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.